There is a story, or perhaps it is more of a feeling, about a man who inherits an old house. The house is vast and full of character, with floors that creak with history and windows that look out onto the changing seasons. But the man is a repairman by nature, and he sees only flaws. He sees a hairline crack in the plaster, a floorboard that groans a little too loudly, a patch of paint that has faded under the sun. And so, he sets to work. His life becomes a constant rhythm of fixing. He spackles the crack, only to find another one appear. He silences the floorboard, and then the door hinge begins to squeak. He repaints the faded wall, and the endless task of preventing the sun from shining feels overwhelming. He is always busy, always armed with his tools, always at war with the natural state of the house. He is utterly exhausted, and the house is never, ever perfect. He has forgotten how to simply live in the house, how to feel the warmth of the sun through the window, or appreciate the way the old wood settles at night. This story is our story. We have been taught to be the relentless repairmen of our own lives. We are told, in 1,000 different ways, that we are a project to be completed, a problem to be solved. We are handed the tools of optimization, of life hacks, of relentless self-improvement. We diagnose our anxiety, our sadness, our restlessness, as if they are structural flaws in our foundation. We apply the spackle of distraction, the hammer of self-criticism, and the fresh paint of new achievements, hoping to create a perfect, flawless version of ourselves. Yet, we find ourselves exhausted. The anxiety we fixated on simply changes its shape. The void we tried to fill with accomplishments remains. The inner house is never quiet, because the sound of our own constant repairs echoes in every room. We are at war with our own experience, trying to fix a life that was never meant to be a static, perfect object, but a living, breathing, and ever-changing process. But what if, for a moment, we put down the tools? What if the goal was never to create a flawless, silent house? What if the cracks are not mistakes, but pathways where the light gets in? What if there is an ancient wisdom, a gentle path that does not ask you to fix yourself, but invites you to finally come home to yourself, exactly as you are? This path suggests that peace is not found at the end of a long list of repairs. It is found in the stillness that arises when we stop trying to fix everything. This is not a call to inaction or to resignation. It is an invitation to a deeper, more compassionate way of being. It is the beginning of a journey to understand the nature of the house itself, to learn its language, and to finally find rest within its imperfectly beautiful walls. Having seen that subtle, persistent hum of dissatisfaction, that feeling of a constant friction in our lives, the question naturally arises: where does it come from? It does not seem to rain down upon us from the clouds, nor rise up from the earth beneath our feet. The ancient masters of the mind, with centuries of profound self-observation, located its source with startling clarity. They said it comes from the very nature of our own unobserved mind, a mind they gave a wonderfully vivid and accurate name: the monkey mind. Imagine a wild monkey, not in a zoo, but in a vast, dense jungle. Its nature is to leap. It swings from one branch to another, never still for more than a moment. It screeches at a shadow, chatters at a bird, grabs for a piece of fruit it has not yet tasted, and then discards it halfway through to chase a fluttering leaf. It is a creature of pure, unrestrained impulse. There is no plan, no quiet contemplation, only a relentless, forward-flung energy. This is the image of our own mind when left to its own devices. This monkey of the mind is ceaselessly active, and its favorite playgrounds are the realms of yesterday and tomorrow. It swings effortlessly back into the past, grabbing onto the branch of a regret. It forces you to relive an awkward conversation from years ago, feeling the same flush of embarrassment as if it were happening right now. It pulls you into the memory of a hurt, replaying the scene over and over, analyzing what you should have said, what you could have done differently. The monkey chatters with the voices of old critics, reminding you of past failures, whispering that you have always been this way, that you will never change. It feeds on the bitter fruits of resentment and the heavy stones of guilt. We do not choose to go to these places. The monkey mind simply takes us there, and we, believing we are the monkey, follow along, feeling the exhaustion of a journey we never intended to take. When it tires of the past, the monkey swings with even greater velocity into the future. This is its realm of endless speculation, the jungle of what if. What if I fail the presentation? What if I get sick? What if my loved ones are not safe? What if I made the wrong career choice? It constructs elaborate, detailed scenarios of disaster, each one feeling viscerally real. Your heart beats faster, your palms sweat. Your body reacts as if the imagined threat is standing right in front of you. It also leaps towards fantasies of pleasure, painting pictures of a perfect vacation, a future success, a moment when all problems will finally be solved. It creates a desperate craving for a future that does not exist, ensuring that the present moment, where life is actually happening, feels drab and insufficient in comparison. The monkey mind is an architect of anxiety and an author of craving, building worlds of fear and fantasy, and leaving us homeless in the here and now. Even when the monkey seems to be in the present, it is not at peace. It becomes a frantic narrator, a constant commentator on our experience. As you try to read a book, the monkey whispers, "You should be working instead. You're being lazy. Remember that email you have to send?" While you speak with a loved one, it's judging your own words. Was that the right thing to say? What do they think of me now? It labels everything. This is good. I want more of it. This is bad. I need it to stop. This is boring. I need something else. There is no space, no silence, no simple being. There is only the constant, chattering evaluation. It is the voice of the inner repairman, pointing out every crack, every flaw, demanding that you do something, fix something, be something other than what you are, right now. And what is our typical response to this inner chaos? We try to fight the monkey. We tell it to be quiet. We try to force it into submission. When a painful thought from the past arises, we try to push it away, to suppress it. When a wave of anxiety about the future crashes over us, we distract ourselves, scrolling through our phones, turning on the television, doing anything to not feel what we are feeling. We try to shout over the monkey's chatter with positive affirmations, or argue with its logic. But this is a battle we can never win. Trying to suppress a thought is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes enormous effort, and the moment you relax, the ball erupts to the surface with even greater force. Arguing with the monkey is like trying to win a shouting match with an echo. The more energy you put in, the louder the noise becomes. This struggle, this inner war against our own thoughts, is the very essence of mental suffering. It is the source of our deepest exhaustion. We are not tired from our lives. We are tired from the ceaseless, unwinnable war against our own minds. Here we must pause and extend a deep breath of compassion to ourselves. Having a monkey mind is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken, or flawed, or lacking in willpower. It is the default human condition. Our brains evolved over millions of years to be survival machines. constantly scanning the past for lessons learned and the future for potential threats. The monkey's frantic energy is, in a way, an ancient survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness in our modern world. So the first step is not to condemn the monkey, but to recognize it for what it is, a natural, impersonal process of the mind. You are not the monkey. You are so much more. There is a beautiful teaching story that illustrates the new path. A young student, tormented by his restless mind, goes to a wise old master for help. "Master," he says, "my mind is like a wild monkey. I cannot control it. It is destroying my peace." The master listens patiently and then says, "Go to an empty room in the monastery. I will give you a rope and a chain. Your task is to tie the monkey up and force it to be still." The student, eager for a solution, does as he is told. He enters the room and spends the entire day in a frantic battle. He imagines wrestling with the monkey, trying to get the rope around it. The more he struggles, the more the imaginary monkey screeches, bites, and thrashes, destroying the imaginary furniture in the room of his mind. At the end of the day, he comes to the master, disheveled and utterly defeated. "I have failed," he says. "The more I tried to tie it down, the wilder it became." The master smiles gently. "Good," he says. "Tomorrow, I want you to go back to the same empty room, but this time, leave the rope and chain behind. Instead, place a single, delicious banana in the center of the room. Then, simply sit in the corner and watch. Do not interfere, just watch." The student is confused, but he obeys. He enters the room, places the banana, and sits quietly. In his mind, the monkey appears. It is cautious at first. It jumps around, screeches a little, but it sees it is not being chased. It sees the banana. It slowly approaches, grabs it, eats it, and then, finding no threat, no one to fight, it eventually curls up in a corner and falls asleep. The student sits in the silence, watching the sleeping monkey. The room is not empty of the monkey, but it is, for the first time, full of peace. This story contains the entire secret. We cannot and need not get rid of the monkey. The task is not to eliminate our thoughts, but to change our relationship to them. The solution is not to fight, but to watch. It is to become the student sitting quietly in the corner of the room of our own mind. It is to cultivate the ability to observe the monkey's antics with a kind of detached curiosity. A thought of regret arises. We don't have to follow it down its painful path. We can simply note, the monkey is remembering again. A wave of worry about the future appears. We don't have to believe its catastrophic stories. We can simply observe, there is the monkey telling tales of tomorrow. We cease to be the monkey and become the spacious awareness in which the monkey can do its dance, and eventually, inevitably, find its rest. We stop being the repairman frantically trying to silence the house and become the quiet resident who can listen to its sounds without being disturbed. But to do this, to sit still in the corner while a wild monkey is in the room, requires a certain skill. It requires an anchor, something to hold us steady, so we are not swept away by every leap and screech. Finding that anchor is the next step on our journey. We have seen the nature of the monkey mind, that restless, chattering energy that pulls us into the past and flings us into the future, leaving us exhausted and absent from our own lives. We have seen the futility of trying to fight it, to chain it down, or to shout over its noise. The wisdom of the gentle path shows us that the solution is not to fight, but to watch, to become the quiet, spacious room in which the monkey can finally find its rest. But this raises a vital, practical question. How do we do this? When the winds of thought are howling and the currents of emotion are pulling us away, how do we remain steady? We need an anchor. We need a place to return to, a refuge that is always available, always stable, always present. This anchor is not something you need to buy or build or find. You already possess it. It has been with you every moment of your life, from the very first cry at your birth to this exact moment now. It is the simple, profound, life-giving rhythm of your own breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. This is the anchor, and the practice of holding onto this anchor, of paying attention to it, has a name. In the ancient language of the Buddha, it is called sati. In English, we call it mindfulness. Let us demystify this word, for it has become laden with many complex ideas. At its core, mindfulness is astonishingly simple. The most classic definition describes it as paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let's look at each part of that. Paying attention. This is a conscious act. It is different from just passively hearing or seeing. It is an intentional directing of your awareness, on purpose. This means you have an intention. The intention is simply to be present, to be here for your own life, in the present moment. This is the only place where life ever unfolds. Not in the replayed memories of the past, nor the imagined fantasies of the future, but right here. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, non-judgmentally. This is the radical part. This means we observe our experience without the constant commentary of the inner critic. We let go of the labels of good or bad, right or wrong, like or dislike. We simply allow things to be as they are. This non-judgmental quality is the deep, healing balm that soothes the frantic energy of the inner repairman. So how do we practice this? How do we use the breath as our anchor? Let us explore this together, right now. You do not need to be in a special place. You can be sitting on a chair, with your feet flat on the floor, your spine upright but not stiff, in a posture of dignity. Or you can be lying down. Simply allow your eyes to gently close. Or if you prefer, lower your gaze to a soft focus on the floor in front of you. Now, bring your attention, your purposeful awareness, to the sensation of your own breathing. Do not try to change it. Do not try to make it deeper or slower. Your body knows how to breathe. Your only task is to feel it. Where do you feel the breath most distinctly? Perhaps you feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the slightly warmer air leaving. Just rest your attention there, at the tip of the nose, feeling that subtle sensation. Or perhaps you feel the breath more in your chest, a gentle expansion as you breathe in, and a gentle release as you breathe out. Or maybe you feel it in your abdomen, the soft rise of your belly on the in-breath, and the gentle fall on the out-breath. It doesn't matter where you feel it. Just choose one spot and let your attention rest there, as if it were a butterfly landing softly on a flower. Feel one full breath in and one full breath out. This is it. This is the practice. You are anchored in the present moment. For this one breath, you are not in the past. You are not in the future. You are simply here, alive, breathing. Now, sooner or later, and probably sooner, something will happen. The monkey mind will awaken. A thought will arise. Am I doing this right? What am I going to have for lunch? I forgot to send that email. The mind will wander. It will grab onto a thought and swing away from the breath. And here we come to the most important instruction in all of mindfulness practice. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered is not a failure. It is the moment of success. That instant of realizing, oh, my mind has been away, is a moment of pure mindfulness. You have just woken up, and what do you do when you wake up? You do not scold yourself. You do not sigh in frustration. You do not judge yourself as a bad meditator. That is just the voice of the old repairman, the inner critic. Instead, you gently and kindly acknowledge the thought. You can even give it a soft label, like thinking or worrying. And then, like a loving parent taking the hand of a wandering child, you gently guide your attention back to the anchor, back to the feeling of the breath. You might have to do this 5 times, or 50 times, or 500 times in a single sitting. It does not matter. The practice is not in staying on the breath. The practice is in the gentle, patient, compassionate returning. Every time you return, you are weakening the habit of being lost in thought and strengthening the muscle of awareness. You are taming the monkey, not with a chain, but with kindness. This practice is the foundation, but its beauty is that it does not have to be confined to a cushion. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, spoke of this with a beautiful story about washing the dishes. He said that while you are washing the dishes, you can be thinking about the cup of tea that awaits you afterwards. In that case, you are not really washing the dishes. You are a ghost, haunting a future that hasn't arrived. But, he said, you can also wash the dishes in a different way. You can be fully present. You can feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You can appreciate the smoothness of the plates. You can be aware of the soap, the bubbles, your own breathing. In that moment, the mundane act of washing dishes becomes a miracle. You are fully alive. The purpose of washing the dishes is not to have clean dishes. The purpose of washing the dishes is to wash the dishes. This is the invitation of mindfulness, to bring this quality of attention to your entire life. When you walk, you can feel the sensation of your feet on the earth. When you drink a cup of coffee, you can actually taste it, feel its warmth, smell its aroma, instead of being lost in a swirl of anxious thoughts. When you listen to another person, you can offer them the greatest gift you have, your full, undivided presence, without planning your reply while they are still speaking. You begin to notice that life is not a series of problems to be fixed, but a stream of moments to be experienced. The anchor of the breath, the anchor of the present moment, is always available to you, a quiet refuge from the storm of the mind. By resting here, in the present, we create a space of clarity. We become the calm observer, the quiet room, and from this stable vantage point, we begin to see the nature of the monkey and its thoughts more clearly. We start to notice something profound, not just about our thoughts, but about everything we perceive through our senses. We notice that nothing holds still. A thought arises, and then it vanishes. A sound appears, and then it is gone. A pleasant feeling comes, and it gives way to a neutral one. An ache in the body intensifies, and then it subsides. Everything is in constant motion. As we hold onto our anchor, we are not watching a static picture. We are witnessing a flowing, shimmering, endless river. And understanding the nature of this river is the next crucial step in learning to let go. As we learn to rest in the present moment, held steady by the anchor of the breath, we become a quiet observer. We sit on the bank of our own inner world and watch the stream of experience flow by. And as we watch, without judgment and without interference, we begin to notice something profound. A thought about work arises, lingers for a moment, and then dissolves. The sound of a distant siren enters our awareness, swells, and then fades away. A feeling of warmth in the hands is replaced by a subtle itch on the cheek. A wave of happiness, triggered by a pleasant memory, crests and then gently subsides, leaving a shoreline of calm neutrality. Nothing stays. Everything we perceive, from the most solid-seeming object in the world to the most fleeting thought in our mind, is in a state of constant, unrelenting flux. This is the river. The ancient teachers of wisdom had a name for this fundamental truth of existence. They called it anicca, or impermanence. It is the universal law that everything that arises must also pass away. The towering mountain is slowly being worn down by wind and rain. The stars we see at night are burning themselves out over eons. Our own bodies are changing with every breath, cells dying and being replaced. And our minds, as we have seen, are a torrent of rising and falling thoughts, emotions, and sensations. To be alive is to be a participant in this ceaseless, dynamic, and unstoppable flow. You cannot step into the same river twice, for not only has the river changed, but you have also changed. This truth, in itself, is neutral. It is simply the way things are. But our minds have a very strong reaction to it. We instinctively try to fight the river. When a moment is pleasant, when we feel joy, love, success, or comfort, our immediate, deep-seated reflex is to build a dam. We try to stop the flow, to hold on to the pleasant water, and create a permanent reservoir of happiness. We cling to the good feeling, saying, "This I want to keep forever." We grasp at a compliment, replaying it in our minds. We try to freeze a perfect moment with a loved one, wishing it would never end. This act of grasping, of trying to make a flowing experience solid and permanent, is a primary source of our suffering. We create tension and anxiety in the very midst of our joy, because deep down, we know the river cannot be stopped. And when the moment is unpleasant, when we experience pain, loss, failure, or discomfort, we have the opposite reflex. We try to build a wall, a dike, to push the river away, to block its course. We resist the feeling of sadness. We deny the reality of a difficult situation. We fight against the sensation of physical pain. We tell ourselves, "This shouldn't be happening. I must get rid of this." This aversion, this resistance to the unpleasant currents of the river, is another immense source of our suffering. It is like trying to push water uphill. It requires tremendous energy, and it is ultimately futile. The river of life contains both pleasant and unpleasant waters, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. The struggle is not inherent in the water itself, but in our frantic and exhausting efforts to build dams and walls against its natural flow. The inner repairman is, at his core, a desperate dam builder, trying to impose permanence on a world that is defined by change. There is a timeless story about a powerful king who had everything he could ever desire. He had wealth, armies, and palaces. Yet, his heart was never at peace. When things went well, he would become inflated with pride and arrogance. When things went badly, he would fall into a pit of despair and rage. He was tossed about violently on the waves of his own fortune. One day, he summoned the wisest sages in his kingdom. "I want you to create a magic ring for me," he commanded. "It must contain a message that has the power to bring me solace when I am in utter despair, but it must also have the power to bring me humility and caution when I am basking in triumph." The sages conferred for a long time, and finally, they returned and presented the king with a simple gold band. The king looked at it and saw a tiny inscription engraved on the inside. The inscription read, "This too shall pass." The king looked at the words, and a profound understanding dawned in his heart. In his moments of greatest victory, he would look at the ring and be reminded that his glory was temporary, a passing wave in the great ocean of time. It would temper his pride with humility. In his moments of deepest sorrow and failure, he would look at the ring and be reminded that his pain was not a permanent state, that the dark clouds would eventually part. It would temper his despair with hope. This simple phrase, "This too shall pass," is the whisper of impermanence. It is the ultimate truth that can ground us in the midst of life's chaos. To truly take this wisdom into our hearts is to change our entire relationship with life. We can begin to see that impermanence is not a curse, but a profound gift. In our times of difficulty, it is a promise. It tells us that no pain is final. The agony of loss, the sting of failure, the grip of anxiety, these are storms passing through the vast sky of our awareness. They are not the sky itself. Because of impermanence, there is always the possibility of change, of healing, of a new morning. The river is always flowing toward new landscapes. And in our times of joy, impermanence is an invitation to be fully present. It teaches us that because these beautiful moments are fleeting, they are infinitely precious. If we try to grasp at a beautiful sunset, we are no longer seeing the sunset. We are lost in the anxiety of it ending. But if we can simply be with it, knowing it will fade, our experience becomes incredibly rich and vibrant. We learn to savor the sweetness of a fresh raspberry because we know it will not last. We cherish a hug with a loved one because we are aware of its brief, beautiful reality. We stop trying to possess our experiences and instead learn to participate in them fully and gratefully. Impermanence is what makes a single moment, a single breath, a sacred and unrepeatable miracle. The practice, then, is to learn how to float, to let go of the exhausting work of building dams and walls, and to trust the flow of the river. This does not mean becoming a passive victim, tossed about by the currents. It means becoming a skillful navigator. It means using our mindfulness, our anchor, to stay balanced and aware as we move with the flow. When pleasant experiences arise, we meet them with gratitude instead of grasping. We say thank you instead of stay here. When unpleasant experiences arise, we meet them with patience, compassion, and courage instead of with resistance. We allow the wave of sadness or anger to wash over us, knowing that if we give it space, it will pass. We are learning to dance with reality rather than wrestle with it. By embracing the truth of impermanence, we begin the process of true letting go. We let go of our war with time. We let go of our demand that life be other than it is. We stop the frantic repairs. We sit by the riverbank and we watch the endless, beautiful, and sometimes painful flow with a growing sense of peace. But this raises a new question. If the river simply flows, what is it within us that insists on building the dams? What is this clenched fist of the mind that grasps so tightly onto what is pleasant and pushes so hard against what is unpleasant? This deep instinct to hold on, this powerful force of attachment, is the engine of our suffering. And to find true freedom, it is this force that we must now turn to and understand with clarity and compassion. We find ourselves standing on the banks of the great river of impermanence, the universal flow of anicca. We have our anchor of mindfulness, allowing us to watch this river without being swept away. And as we watch, we've asked the crucial question: if the river simply flows, what is this force within us that resists it so fiercely? What is this instinct that builds dams against the current, that frantically tries to hold on to the pleasant water and push away the unpleasant? The wisdom traditions give this force a name. In the Pali language, it is called upadana. It translates as clinging, grasping, or attachment, and it is identified as the immediate, tangible cause of our deepest suffering. To understand upadana, Imagine for a moment that you make a fist with your hand. Clench it tightly. Feel the tension in your fingers, the strain in your palm and your wrist, the effort it takes to maintain that grip. This tension, this effortful holding, is a perfect physical metaphor for what our mind does with experience. The mind clenches around ideas, feelings, people, and objects, trying to make them solid, permanent, and possessable. This mental clenching, this constant, subtle effort of holding on and pushing away, is upadana. It is the friction that creates the heat of anxiety, the ache of disappointment, and the fire of frustration. When we hear the word attachment, we often think of material possessions, the desire for a bigger house, a faster car, the latest technology. And this is certainly one form of it. We can see how clinging to objects creates a cycle of temporary pleasure, followed by the anxiety of protecting those objects and the fear of losing them. But upadana is far more subtle and pervasive than mere materialism. It permeates every corner of our inner world. We cling to views and opinions. Notice the heat that arises in your body when a deeply held political or social belief is challenged. That feeling of righteousness, that urgent need to defend our position and prove the other person wrong, that is the mind clenching. We have fused our sense of self with our opinions. So an attack on our view feels like an attack on our very being. We would rather be right than be at peace. We cling to our identity. This is perhaps the most hidden and powerful form of grasping. We create a story of who we are. I am a successful professional. I am a good parent. I am a healthy, disciplined person. Or even, I am a sensitive soul who has been wronged by the world. We cling to this narrative, this statue of me. Then, the river of life, in its indifferent flow, brings a challenge. We lose a job. Our child struggles. We get sick. The narrative is threatened, and the statue begins to crack. The pain we feel is not just from the event itself, but from the violent collision between reality and the fixed identity we were clinging to. We suffer because we refuse to accept that we are not a static statue, but a flowing, changing river. And we cling in our relationships. This is not the same as love. Love is an open, wishing of well-being for another. Clinging is the clenched fist of, I need you to be a certain way so that I can be happy. It is the unspoken demand that our partner, our child, or our friend fulfill a role in our personal story. When they inevitably act according to their own nature, their own river, we feel betrayed and hurt, not because they have wronged us, but because they have deviated from the script we were clinging to. It is vital here to distinguish between healthy desire and the suffering of clinging. The path of letting go is not a path of apathy or numbness. It is perfectly natural to desire health, to wish for the well-being of our loved ones, to prefer joy over sorrow. Desire is a direction, a gentle preference. Clinging is a desperate, white-knuckled demand. Desire says, I would love for the sun to shine today. Clinging says, the day is ruined if it rains. Desire is an open palm, ready to receive the sunshine, but also able to feel the rain without closing into a fist of anger. Clinging is the fist, demanding the sun and cursing the rain. There is a profound and ancient parable that illustrates the mechanism of our self-imprisonment. In many parts of the world, a clever method was used to trap monkeys. A hunter would take a coconut or a gourd, make a small hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through, and then place some tempting nuts or sweet rice inside. The gourd would then be chained to a stake. Soon enough, a monkey, drawn by the bait, would approach. It would slip its slender hand through the hole, grasp the delicious prize inside, and clench its hand into a fist. Then, it would try to pull its hand out, but the fist, now widened by the nuts it was holding, would not fit through the narrow opening. The monkey would pull and screech and thrash about in a panic. It would see the hunter approaching and become frantic, but it could not let go of the nuts. The hunter could then simply walk up and capture the monkey. The tragedy of the story is that the monkey is not truly trapped by the gourd or the chain. The trap is entirely of its own making. At any moment, all it has to do is open its hand, release the nuts, and it would be free. Its freedom is one simple, open-handed gesture away. But its craving, its powerful, instinctual clinging to the prize, is stronger than its desire for freedom. It becomes a prisoner of its own clenched fist. We are that monkey. And our lives are full of invisible gourds. What are the nuts that we are clinging to so tightly that they keep us trapped in situations of stress, anxiety, and conflict? Is it the need to be right? Is it a grievance from the past that we refuse to release? Is it a specific image of how our life is supposed to look? Is it a demand that a person we love be different than they are? The practice is not to try and break the gourd. The practice is to look honestly and compassionately at our own clenched fist. Using our mindfulness, we can begin to notice the feeling of clenching in the mind. When you feel that familiar tension of stress, or the sting of resentment, or the ache of anxiety, you can gently ask yourself, what am I holding on to right now? What am I demanding from this moment that it is not giving me? You are not asking this in order to judge yourself, but simply to see. This seeing, this mindful awareness, is like a warm light shining on the clenched fist. And under the gentle warmth of awareness, without any force, the fingers naturally begin to loosen their grip. You don't have to pry them open. The seeing itself is the beginning of letting go. An open hand is a symbol of freedom. It is relaxed. It is receptive. It can give freely, and it can receive freely. When we hold our life with an open hand, we can still cherish the good things, love, joy, success, but we hold them lightly. We appreciate their presence without demanding their permanence. And when difficult times come, pain, loss, sorrow, we allow them to pass through without closing our hand in resistance. We learn to feel everything, to be present for the whole of the river, without the exhausting tension of the clenched fist, but to truly open the hand, to fully embody this release. We need to cultivate a new, radical attitude towards reality. We must learn to stop fighting with what is, and instead meet it with a courageous and unconditional welcome. This profound gesture of acceptance is the very essence of the open hand. We have explored the clenched fist of the mind, the deep instinct of clinging, or upadana, that resists the natural flow of life and creates so much of our suffering. We have seen how this grasping is the engine of the inner repairman, the frantic energy that tries to nail down a world that is constantly in motion. We have seen the wisdom in the parable of the monkey trap, where freedom is only one simple, open-handed gesture away. So, what is this gesture? What is the practice that allows the fingers to finally unclench? This gesture, this profound shift in our entire orientation to life, is the practice of acceptance. Now, the word acceptance is perhaps one of the most misunderstood in all of spiritual practice. Our minds, conditioned to fight and to fix, immediately equate it with weakness. We think it means resignation, passivity, condoning a harmful situation, or simply giving up. But true acceptance is the very opposite of this. It is not a passive act. It is an act of immense courage. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a demonstration of profound strength and wisdom. It is the courageous and clear-seeing act of looking at reality exactly as it is in this moment and saying a quiet, firm, and unconditional yes to it. Let us use a simple, everyday example. Imagine you have planned an outdoor picnic. You have looked forward to it all week. You wake up on the morning of the picnic, look out the window, and it is pouring rain. Now, observe the reaction of the resisting mind, the mind of the clenched fist. It screams, "No, this can't be happening. This is a disaster. It's not fair." The mind begins a long, futile argument with the weather. It generates anger, frustration, and a cloud of misery. It is in a state of war with reality. But notice, this entire inner battle does not stop a single drop of rain from falling. It achieves nothing except to create suffering for you. Now, consider the mind of acceptance, the mind of the open hand. It looks out the window and it simply notes, "It is raining." This is the powerful, simple yes. It is a recognition of what is. This yes does not mean, "I am happy that it is raining." It does not mean, "I approve of this rain." It does not mean you are giving up on your day. It simply means you have stopped arguing with a fact you cannot change. And from this place of clear-eyed acceptance, and only from this place, can wise and effective action arise. Okay, it is raining. I will call my friends and we will have the picnic indoors. Or, I will put on my raincoat and go for a beautiful walk in the woods. Acceptance is not the end of action. It is the necessary, peaceful foundation from which all skillful action begins. This principle applies to the outer weather, but its true power is revealed when we apply it to our inner weather, the turbulent and often unwelcome storms of our own emotions. Think of a time you felt a wave of anxiety rise within you. What was your first instinct? For most of us, the first instinct is resistance. Oh no, not this feeling again. I have to get rid of it. I can't feel this way. We declare war on our own anxiety. We try to suppress it, distract ourselves from it, or reason it away. But as we learned, this is like trying to flatten the ripples in a pond. By pressing down on them, we only create more turmoil. This struggle against the feeling is the famous second arrow. The initial anxiety is the first arrow it arrives, unbidden, like the rain. Our resistance, our declaration of war against it, is the second arrow, the one we shoot into ourselves. And it is this arrow that causes the deepest wound. The practice of acceptance is the practice of consciously choosing not to shoot the second arrow. When the feeling of anxiety arises, instead of turning away from it, you turn towards it. You bring your mindful attention to it, and you say yes. Not a yes of resignation, but a yes of recognition. Yes, this is present right now. This is the feeling of tightness in my chest. This is the feeling of racing thoughts. I will allow this to be here, just for this moment. You are not saying you want it to stay forever. You are simply dropping the rope in the tug of war. You are taking a radical step. You are giving the feeling permission to exist. And here, a kind of magic happens. The moment we stop fighting an emotion, the moment we meet it with this spacious, allowing presence, it begins to lose its power over us. The monster we were wrestling with, a monster that grew larger with every bit of our resistance, suddenly finds that no one is fighting it anymore. And in the absence of that struggle, it often begins to soften, to shrink, and to eventually pass on its own, like a storm cloud that has finally released its rain. There is a beautiful metaphor for this in the Japanese martial art of Aikido. Unlike many martial arts that meet force with opposing forcia block against a punch, the Aikido master's approach is one of acceptance and blending. When an attacker lunges, the master does not create a rigid wall of resistance. Instead, they move with the attacker's energy. They accept the force of the attack, blend with its momentum, and then gently, almost effortlessly, redirect it so that the attacker is thrown off balance by their own aggression. The master's power comes not from opposition, but from a profound and yielding acceptance of the energy that is coming towards them. In our lives, the difficulties, the painful emotions, the unwelcome situations, these are the lunging attacker. Our habitual resistance is the rigid, brittle block. We meet the force head-on, and we often get exhausted, hurt, and knocked down. Acceptance is the Aikido move. It is learning to meet the energy of anxiety, of grief, of frustration. By blending with it, by saying yes to its presence, we stop being its victim and we become a skillful dancer, able to move with it in a way that preserves our balance and our inner peace. This is the opposite of the inner repairman, who is always trying to rigidly block and pave over every difficulty. It is the wisdom of the dancer, who knows that the only way to navigate the music is to move with it. This practice of saying yes is the ultimate act of kindness to ourselves. It is the cessation of the inner war. It is the gesture of the open hand, finally unclenching after a lifetime of holding on so tightly. It is surrender, not the surrender of a defeated army, but the sweet surrender of a tired swimmer who finally stops thrashing against the current and allows the water to hold them. But as we begin to practice this, as we try to meet our pain with a gentle yes, we will almost certainly hear another voice emerge from the background. It is a familiar voice, sharp and critical. As we try to accept our sadness, it whispers, "You're just being weak." As we allow a moment of anger, it scolds, "Good people don't feel this way." This is the voice of our inner judge, the great saboteur of acceptance. And to truly find our freedom, it is to this formidable inner critic that we must now turn our compassionate attention. We have explored the path of acceptance, the courageous act of saying yes to the unfolding reality of the present moment, both in the world around us and in the world within us. We have seen it as the gesture of the open hand, the release of the clenched fist of resistance. But as we stand on this threshold, ready to welcome our own experience with openness, another figure often emerges from the shadows. It is a figure we know intimately. It speaks with our own voice, but it is not our friend. It is the inner judge, the inner critic, the saboteur. It is the relentless narrator that undermines our every effort at peace. The moment we try to accept our sadness, it whispers, "You're just wallowing in self-pity." The moment we feel a surge of joy, it cautions, "Don't get too comfortable. It won't last." The moment we try to simply be, it presents a long list of all the things we should be doing, all the ways we are falling short. This voice is the very antithesis of acceptance. It is the master repairman, armed with a red pen, circling every perceived flaw in our being. To find freedom, we must first understand the nature of this judge. Where does it come from? It was not born with us. It is a construction, built slowly over time from the materials of our life. It is made from the echoes of a critical parent's words, the disappointment in a teacher's eyes, the impossible standards of society, and the painful sting of past failures. It is a deeply ingrained survival strategy. In our evolutionary past, fitting in with the tribe was a matter of life and death. The inner critic developed as a harsh internal policeman, trying to keep us in line, to make sure we were acceptable, to prevent us from being cast out. Its intention, at its deepest root, may be to protect us, but its methods are brutal. It is like a security system that has gone haywire, seeing threats everywhere and blaring its alarms so constantly that we can no longer hear the quiet music of our own life. It is a recording that has been playing on a loop for so long. We have mistaken it for the truth of who we are. And this leads us to the single most important, most liberating insight we can have about this voice. You are not the judge. You are not the voice of the critic. That voice is a conditioned, habitual pattern of thought, arising and passing away in the vast space of your consciousness. Imagine you are the sky vast, open, boundless, and aware. The inner critic is a dark, turbulent storm cloud that drifts through the sky. It may be loud, it may be full of lightning and thunder, it may temporarily obscure the sun, but it is not the sky. The sky is untouched by the storm. Our suffering comes from the moment we forget we are the sky and we identify with the cloud. We believe we are the storm. The first step to freedom is to disidentify. It is to create a space between the awareness that you are and the thoughts that you have. It is to learn to witness the storm cloud of judgment without being swept up into its turmoil. How do we do this? Not by fighting. If you argue with the judge, you have already lost. To argue with it or say, "No, I'm not a failure," is to step into its courtroom, to play its game, and to give it your full attention and energy. The judge thrives on conflict. It is what it knows best. To try and suppress it is also futile. It will simply go into the shadows and gain strength, its whispers becoming more insidious. The path is a more radical one, a path of profound stillness and clear seeing. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that shows us the way. As he sat on the verge of enlightenment, he was assailed by a figure named Mara. Mara is the personification of every force that obstructs peace. Fear, doubt, greed, lust, and, most certainly, judgment and criticism. Mara paraded his beautiful daughters to tempt the Buddha and summoned a demonic army to terrify him. He hurled insults and whispered doubts, saying, "Who do you think you are to be seeking enlightenment? You are not worthy." Mara is the ultimate inner critic. The Buddha's response was extraordinary. He did not draw a sword to fight the army. He did not run away in fear. He did not even engage Mara in debate. He simply remained seated, in perfect stillness, and met Mara's onslaught with calm awareness. He looked at the terrifying figure and said, with serene equanimity, "I see you, Mara." In that moment of seeing, of acknowledging without believing, Mara's power vanished. The demonic soldiers turned into flowers. By refusing to be Mara's opponent, the Buddha had disarmed him completely. In some versions of the story, the Buddha then invites Mara to have tea. This is the pinnacle of the practice. It is to say to our own inner critic, "Ah, there you are. I see you. I hear your familiar stories of my inadequacy. I recognize you." We acknowledge its presence. We might even understand its misguided intention to protect us. But we do not let it become the host of our inner home. We do not believe its stories. We do not drink its poison. We are the host. It is merely a visitor, a passing storm cloud. This practice of mindful recognition creates the space we need. But to truly heal the wounds left by the judge, we must introduce a new quality into our inner world. The inner judge thrives in a cold, harsh, and unforgiving climate. The direct antidote, the force that can melt the ice of self-criticism, is the warmth of compassion, specifically self-compassion. For many of us, this is a foreign concept. We may be very skilled at offering compassion to others, but we treat ourselves with a severity we would never dream of inflicting on anyone else. Think of it this way. If your dearest friend came to you after a terrible day, feeling they had failed at something important, what would you do? Would you look at them and say, "You're right, you are a failure. You always mess things up. You should be ashamed"? Of course not. The thought is abhorrent. You would offer them a kind word. You might put an arm around them. You would listen with patience and remind them of their inherent goodness and strength. You would offer them the gift of your compassion. The practice of self-compassion is simply to learn how to turn this same quality of kindness inward. It is to learn to treat ourselves as we would a beloved friend. It is to meet our own failures and imperfections, not with the harsh gavel of the judge, but with the gentle, soothing hand of a friend. So the way forward is twofold. First, we use our mindfulness to see the judge for what it is, an impersonal, conditioned thought pattern, not the truth of who we are. I see you, Mara. Second, we actively introduce the warmth of self-compassion, creating a new inner climate where the judge's icy pronouncements can no longer survive. We learn to befriend ourselves, but this is not always easy. The voice of the critic is a lifelong habit, and the voice of self-compassion may be weak and unfamiliar. We might wonder, how do we make this new voice stronger? How do we systematically and intentionally train our hearts to be more compassionate? Just as an athlete has specific exercises to strengthen their body, there are ancient and powerful practices designed to strengthen the heart. And it is to these practices, these ways of actively planting the seeds of kindness within us, that we now turn. We have stood face to face with the inner judge, that relentless inner critic forged from our past and our fears. We have seen the wisdom in the Buddha's approach not to fight this inner Mara, but to meet it with the calm, disarming power of mindful awareness. And we have discovered that the ultimate antidote to the cold, harsh climate where the judge thrives is the gentle, pervasive warmth of self-compassion. This leads us to a deeply practical question. How do we actively cultivate this warmth? How do we train the heart to be a friend to ourselves, especially when the habit of self-criticism is so deeply ingrained? We cannot simply command ourselves to be more compassionate. We need a practice, a method, a form of gentle exercise for the heart. Fortunately, the wisdom traditions provide just such a practice. It is ancient, profound, and beautifully systematic. It is called metta bhavana. In the ancient Pali language, metta means loving kindness, unconditional friendliness, or a gentle, benevolent warmth. Bhavana means cultivation or development. So, this is the practice of cultivating loving kindness. It is the conscious, intentional work of planting and nurturing the seeds of compassion that already exist within us, waiting for our attention. There is a wise story, told in many forms, of a spiritual elder teaching their grandchild. The elder says, "Inside of me, there are two wolves fighting a great battle. One wolf is all that is destructive. It is anger, envy, resentment, self-pity, and ego. The other wolf is all that is life-affirming. It is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, and compassion." The grandchild thinks about this for a moment, and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" The elder replies simply, "The one you feed and booze." For many of us, our unconscious mental habits are constantly feeding the wolf of fear and criticism. Every time we indulge in anxious worry, every time we replay an old grievance, every time we listen to the voice of the inner judge, we are feeding that wolf. Metta practice is the revolutionary act of consciously choosing to feed the other wolf. It is a systematic way of providing nourishment to the seeds of kindness so that they can grow strong and vibrant until their voice becomes more natural and more powerful than the voice of the critic. The practice begins in a place that, for many of us, is the most challenging, with ourselves. In a culture that often mistakes self-compassion for selfishness or self-indulgence, offering kindness to ourselves can feel awkward, unmerited, or even impossible. This is where the inner judge is often at its most powerful, whispering, "You don't deserve this." We must be patient here. The practice is not about forcing a feeling. It is about setting an intention. Let's begin. Find a comfortable posture, one of ease and dignity. Allow your body to soften. And first, let's just generate the seed of metta. It can be helpful to bring to mind someone or something for whom you feel an easy, uncomplicated love. Perhaps a beloved pet, the way it looks at you with pure trust. Or a small child in your life, full of innocence and joy. Or perhaps a memory of a time you felt safe and held, maybe in a beautiful natural place. Just touch into that feeling of warmth, of gentle affection. This is the feeling of metta. Now, see if you can gently redirect that feeling inward, towards yourself. We use a set of traditional phrases, not as affirmations we have to believe, but as gentle wishes, as offerings from our heart to our own being. You can repeat them silently, in rhythm with your breath. The classic phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." As you repeat them, do not worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of self-love. That is not the point. The point is the gentle, patient offering. The point is the intention. You are simply watering a seed. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be happy and know the sources of true happiness. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I live with ease and meet life's challenges with grace and peace. You continue this for some minutes, patiently returning to the phrases each time the mind wanders. You are feeding the kind wolf. Once you have spent time offering this kindness to yourself, the practice expands in concentric circles. Next, you bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel gratitude and easy affection. Hold an image of them in your mind and now offer the phrases to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth that flows from your heart as you wish this dear one well. This helps the feeling of metta to grow stronger and flow more freely. The next circle is to bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a cashier you see at the grocery store, a person who delivers your mail, someone you see on your commute. You don't have strong feelings about them either way, and you offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This is a powerful step. It stretches the muscle of the heart, helping us to see the humanity in those we might normally overlook. It breaks down the walls of indifference. Then, when you feel ready, and this may not be for some time, the practice moves to the most challenging circle, the difficult person. Bring to mind someone with whom you have friction, anger, or resentment. The intention here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force a superficial forgiveness. The intention is to free yourself from the prison of your own hatred. You recognize that this person, too, is a suffering being. Their harmful actions likely spring from their own pain and confusion. So, with as much sincerity as you can muster, you offer the phrases, "Just as I wish to be free from suffering, may you also be free from suffering. May you find the peace you are looking for." This is a profound act of healing for your own heart. Finally, the practice radiates outwards to encompass all beings, without exception. You imagine this warmth, this light of loving kindness, extending from your heart in all directions, to all people, all animals, all creatures, living in the water, on the land, and in the air, to all beings near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, you are connecting with the universal wish for well-being that animates all life. This practice is not merely a poetic sentiment. It is a form of profound mental training. Modern neuroscience is beginning to show us what the ancient masters knew through introspection. This practice changes the brain. By repeatedly and intentionally activating the neural pathways associated with compassion, empathy, and kindness, we are strengthening them. We are literally rewiring our habitual responses. The well-worn, rutted path of self-criticism and judgment begins to grow over from disuse, and the path of self-kindness, at first a narrow trail, becomes a broad, smooth, and familiar highway. The voice of the inner friend begins to speak more loudly and more often than the voice of the inner judge. This is the work of the gentle gardener. We are no longer the frantic repairman. We are consciously choosing which seeds to water in the garden of our own heart. And as we continue this cultivation, something truly remarkable begins to happen. As we extend these wishes of peace from ourselves to our loved ones, to strangers, and even to our enemies, the rigid boundaries that we have drawn between self and other begin to soften and dissolve. We begin to see, on a deep and intuitive level, that the same fundamental desire for happiness and freedom from suffering that lives in us also lives in everyone we meet. This growing recognition of our shared humanity, our common struggle, and our common hope is the natural flowering of a compassionate heart, and it is this profound sense of connection that we will explore next. Having planted the seeds of loving kindness within our own heart, having tended to them with the gentle repetition of a wish for our own well-being, we begin to extend that warmth outwards. We move from ourselves to our loved ones, to the neutral people in our lives, and even to those we find difficult. As we engage in this heartfelt practice, a profound shift begins to occur. It is as if the rigid, sharp outlines that define our sense of self start to soften. The solid wall between me and you becomes more permeable, more transparent. We start to look out at the world, not from the lonely fortress of our own concerns, but from a wider, more compassionate vantage point. We begin to truly understand, in our bones, that everyone is fighting a battle. For most of our lives, we operate as the unquestioned star of our own private movie. The story is all about me, my hopes, my fears, my goals, my irritations. Other people are cast in supporting roles. The person who cuts us off in traffic is not a complex human being. They are simply the villain in that scene, an obstacle to my getting to work on time. The cashier who seems distracted and slow is not a person with their own worries. They are an inconvenience in the narrative of my busy day. We see others not as they are, but as they relate to us. This self-centered viewpoint, while completely normal, is the source of endless judgment, friction, and a subtle but pervasive sense of isolation. We live in a world populated by objects and extras, rather than a world of fellow, feeling beings. There is a modern word that beautifully captures the antidote to this self-centered view: sonder. Sonder is defined as the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. It is the sudden, humbling awareness that the anonymous face in the crowd is the main character in their own epic story. That person staring out the bus window may not just be staring blankly. They might be replaying a wonderful first date in their mind, or they might be grappling with a frightening medical diagnosis. The woman laughing loudly on her phone might have just received the best news of her life. The man hunched over his coffee might be shouldering a grief so heavy it is a physical weight. Sonder is the moment the camera of our awareness pulls back from the tight close-up on our own face and pans out to reveal the breathtaking, heartbreaking, and magnificent tapestry of a billion other stories unfolding simultaneously, all around us. To embrace this perspective is to fundamentally change how we interpret the world, especially the difficult behaviors of others. When someone is rude, arrogant, or impatient with us, our first instinct is to take it personally. We feel attacked. The clenched fist of the ego tightens, and the inner judge prepares its case against them. But the mind of compassion, the mind that understands Sonder, asks a different, more spacious question. What might be happening in this person's life that is causing them to act this way? We begin to see their anger not as a personal assault, but as a symptom of their own suffering. Their impatience is likely fueled by their own anxiety. Their arrogance is almost certainly a fragile mask, covering a deep insecurity. We are not excusing their behavior, but we are ceasing to be its victim. It is their second arrow, not ours. We see the struggling person behind the hostile act, and while we may still need to set a boundary, we can do so from a place of calm clarity rather than reactive anger. The personal sting is gone. There is a profoundly moving story from the Buddhist tradition that illustrates this journey from personal grief to universal compassion. A young woman named Kisa Gautami was blissfully happy with her husband and their newborn son, but tragedy struck, and her infant son died suddenly. Kisa Gautami was driven mad with grief. She refused to accept his death, and she wandered from house to house, clutching the small, lifeless body, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her child back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man directed her to the Buddha. She laid her child at the Buddha's feet and pleaded, "Master, can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "Yes, I can help you, but to make the medicine, I will need a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." Kisa Gautami's heart soared with hope. A mustard seed. That was so simple. She set off immediately, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "I need a mustard seed for a medicine from the Buddha. Have you known death in this house?" The woman replied, "I have. I lost my beloved husband last year." At the next house, the answer was the same. "We can give you all the mustard seeds you want, but our eldest son was taken from us." She went to house after house, in the village and beyond, and the story was repeated everywhere. "The living are few, but the dead are many," they told her. "Do not remind us of our deepest grief." As the sun began to set, Kisa Gautami sat down by the side of the road, exhausted. The profound truth of her journey washed over her. There was not a single home untouched by the sorrow of loss. Her own devastating grief, which had felt so singular, so isolating, was in fact the universal inheritance of being human. She was not alone in her pain. She was deeply connected to everyone through it. In that moment, her frantic, grasping self dissolved into a vast, compassionate understanding of the shared human condition. She gently wrapped her child in a cloth and laid him to rest, her heart no longer broken by a personal tragedy, but softened and opened by a universal truth. This is the journey from me to we. When we realize that everyone is fighting a battle, the poison of comparison and envy begins to lose its hold. We can see another's success, not as a measure of our failure, but as a moment of happiness for a fellow being who is also seeking peace. The bitterness of resentment can soften when we see that the person who hurt us is also a complex, suffering individual, trapped in their own patterns. We are all Kisa Gautami, in our own way, going from door to door, searching for a cure for our own private sorrow, only to discover that our sorrow is the very thread that connects us all. This profound feeling of interconnection, of seeing our own struggles and hopes reflected in the eyes of everyone we meet, naturally leads us to question the very foundation of our separateness. If my inner world of thoughts, fears, and longings is so much like yours, and yours is so much like hers, then what is this solid, independent self that I work so tirelessly to protect, promote, and repair? Is this I that feels so central and so real, actually as solid and enduring as it seems? This question, born from the heart of compassion, opens the door to one of the most radical and liberating insights of this entire path, the wisdom that sees, through the illusion of a separate self, we have journeyed together into a wider, more compassionate view of the world, seeing that every person we meet is, like us, fighting their own battle, animated by the same deep wish for happiness and freedom from suffering. This growing sense of our shared humanity, this softening of the borders between self and other, inevitably leads us to a profound and unsettling question. It brings us right to the very center of our own experience, to the one thing we have always taken for granted as real, solid, and continuous. It forces us to ask, what exactly is this self that I work so hard to defend, to promote, and to repair? Is the I, at the center of my universe, as real and permanent as it feels? The path of wisdom now invites us to look directly at this question, to investigate it with a gentle and fearless curiosity. For in this investigation lies the key to the most radical and liberating freedom imaginable. This teaching is perhaps the most subtle, and for many, the most challenging of all. It is the teaching of anatta, or not self. Let us be clear from the outset. This is not a teaching that you do not exist. You are clearly here, listening, breathing, feeling, thinking. This is not about nihilism or annihilation. It is about seeing the nature of your existence more clearly. It is about realizing that what you take to be a solid, singular, and enduring self is, in fact, something far more fluid, more mysterious, and more wonderful. It is about seeing that you are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. From the moment we learn to speak, we are taught to use the word I. I am hungry. I am happy. I want that. This I feels like the CEO of our being, a little person sitting in a command center behind our eyes, pulling the levers and directing the show. It feels like the constant, unchanging thread that runs through all our experiences, linking our childhood memories to our present moment and our future hopes. This is the self we cling to, the identity we build, the precious statue of me that we spend our entire lives polishing, defending, and trying to perfect. The inner repairman's primary job is the upkeep of this statue. When someone praises us, the statue gleams. When someone criticizes us, a crack appears, and we rush to patch it. The entire project of our life becomes the preservation of this statue. The wisdom of anatta invites us to do something radical. It invites us to look for this CEO, to search for this solid, unchanging statue within our actual experience. And when we do, we find something remarkable. We find that it is not there. What we find instead is a dynamic, interdependent flow of processes. The ancient teachings broke this flow down into 5 categories, or aggregates. First, there is the body, or form. Is this body the permanent you? Look at it closely. It is changing in every moment. Cells are dying. New cells are being born. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago. It gets sick. It heals. It ages. It is a process, not a fixed thing. Second, there are feelings. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings are constantly arising and passing away, like weather moving through the sky. A moment of joy gives way to a moment of boredom, which gives way to a pang of sadness. Are you any one of these feelings? If you were, you would cease to exist when the feeling changed. You are not the feeling. You are the awareness that experiences the feeling. Third, there are perceptions. This is the process of labeling and recognizing what our senses take in. We see a shape and color and label it tree. We hear a sound and label it music. These perceptions are shaped by our past, our culture, our mood. They are not a pure reflection of reality, and they are constantly shifting. Fourth, there are mental formations. This is a vast category that includes all our thoughts, our opinions, our moods, our habits, our intentions, and our volitions. This is the chattering of the monkey mind. But are you any single thought? A thought is like a bubble that pops up and then vanishes. If you were your thoughts, you would be 1,000 different people every hour. You are not the thought. You are the space in which the thought appears. And fifth, there is consciousness itself, the raw capacity of knowing, the light of awareness that illuminates the other four processes. This consciousness is not a solid thing either. It arises in dependence on an object. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, thinking consciousness. It is a flickering, dependent, and changing process. So we look at our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our thoughts, and our consciousness, and we cannot find a permanent, independent owner or CEO anywhere. The self we have been searching for is like the rainbow. A rainbow is a real experience, but if you go to where it is, you cannot grasp it. It is a phenomenon that arises from the interplay of sun, water, and your perspective. Similarly, the self is a phenomenon that arises from the interplay of these five processes. It is a convenient label we give to this flowing, psychophysical stream. There is a famous dialogue from an ancient text that brilliantly illustrates this. A wise sage named Nagasena is questioned by a Greek king, Melinda. The king asks, "What is your name, venerable sir?" Nagasena replies that he is known as Nagasena, but this is just a designation, a conventional name, and that no permanent person can be found. The king is clever and skeptical. He challenges the sage, using the chariot he arrived in as an example. If there is no person, the king asks, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? He then turns the sage's logic back on him. Venerable sir, what is a chariot? Is it the pole? Is it the axle? Is it the wheels, the frame, the reins? To each question, Nagasena answers no. Then, the king declares triumphantly, "There is no chariot. You have lied." Nagasena remains calm and asks the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here?" "By chariot," the king replies. Nagasena then delivers the profound insight. He explains that chariot is simply the name, the convenient designation given to the collection of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the frame, all assembled and working together. It exists as a convention, but one cannot find some essential, unchanging chariotness, separate from its parts. Nagasena concludes, "Just so, Your Majesty, Nagasena is a convenient designation for the ever-changing collection of these five processes. There is no permanent person to be found." And to hear this for the first time can be disorienting. But if we can stay with it, we find it is the key to ultimate freedom. If there is no fixed, solid self, then there is no fixed, solid floor. The painful story you have told yourself for years, "I am an anxious person. I am not good enough. I am unlovable. loses its power. These are not permanent labels defining an enduring entity. They are just temporary, conditioned patterns of thought and feeling passing through your awareness. They are storm clouds, not the sky. The immense, lifelong burden of having to protect, defend, and perfect the statue of me is suddenly lifted. There is no statue. There is only the flowing river. This is the final, ultimate answer to the fix-it mentality. You finally see that the thing you have been trying so hard to repair was never a fixed thing to begin with. This, however, leads to a natural and important paradox. If there is no solid self, then who is it that is hearing these words? Who is it that decides to be kind or cruel? If there is no one in charge, what is the basis for responsibility or morality? Are we just helpless puppets in a cosmic flow? This is not a contradiction to be feared, but a pointer towards a more subtle and beautiful understanding of how life operates. It shows us that our actions are not dictated by a fixed CEO, but are part of an impersonal, lawful unfolding of cause and effect, initiated by something far more powerful than a static self. It is initiated by intention. And understanding this law of cause and effect, of karma, is our next step on this journey to freedom. We have journeyed to the very core of our perceived identity, investigating the solid self we work so hard to protect, and finding in its place a dynamic, flowing river of processes. We have seen that we are not a fixed statue, but a constantly changing interplay of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. This insight, the wisdom of anatta, or not self, is profoundly liberating. It frees us from the exhausting project of trying to perfect a permanent self that was never there to begin with. But it also raises a deep and honest question, one that can feel like a paradox. If there is no solid, unchanging CEO in charge, then who is it that acts? Who makes the choice to be kind over cruel? Who is responsible for the consequences of a life lived? If we are just a river, are we not simply carried along by its currents, helpless to change its course? The wisdom traditions answer this not by pointing to a who, but by pointing to a what. The answer is a natural law, as impersonal and as reliable as the law of gravity. This law is known by the Sanskrit word karma, and just like the word acceptance, the word karma is deeply misunderstood in the modern world. It has been distorted to mean something akin to fate, destiny, or a system of cosmic revenge. We imagine a celestial accountant with a great ledger, tallying up our good and bad deeds and doling out rewards and punishments. This view of karma breeds fear, superstition, and a sense of helpless resignation. It is the very opposite of the Buddha's liberating teaching. True karma has nothing to do with a judging deity or a predetermined fate. The Buddha defined it with elegant simplicity. He said, "It is intention that I call karma. For having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. That is the entire key. Karma is simply the law of cause and effect, and the seed of that cause is our own intention. It is the law of agriculture, applied to the heart and mind. If you plant an acorn, you will get an oak tree. You will not get a rose bush. If you plant a seed of anger, you will harvest the fruit of turmoil. If you plant a seed of compassion, you will harvest the fruit of peace." The law is impersonal, unwavering, and completely natural. There is no judgment involved. The soil does not judge the acorn. It simply provides the conditions for it to become what it is. To understand this in our lives, let us imagine a farmer standing in his field. This field represents his present reality, the quality of the soil, the amount of rain that has fallen, the lingering effects of last year's crop. These are the results of countless past causes and conditions. The farmer cannot change the fact that there was a drought last season. He cannot undo the poor choices he made years ago. This is his current situation, the fruit of past karma. To stand in the field and bemoan the quality of the soil is a useless exercise. This is where we often get stuck, lamenting our current circumstances, feeling like victims of our past. But the farmer is not helpless. In fact, he is supremely powerful in the present moment. He cannot change the past, but he has complete and total agency over what he does now. He holds a bag of seeds in his hands. He has the choice. Will he plant nourishing wheat, or will he scatter the seeds of poisonous weeds? This choice is his intention. Once he has chosen, he acts. He plants the wheat. This action, born of intention, is the new karma he is creating, and the harvest he will reap in the future will be a direct result of the seeds he is planting today. Furthermore, he can choose how he tends the field. He can diligently water the seeds, pull the weeds of his old, unskillful habits, and add the nutrients of mindfulness and care. Or he can be neglectful, allowing the weeds to choke the new growth. His future is not fated. It is being cultivated, moment by moment, by the quality of his present actions. We are this farmer. Our mind is this field. Our current emotional state, our habits, our life situation, and this is the fruit of countless seeds we have planted in the past through our own thoughts, words, and deeds. We cannot go back and unplant them, but we are not our past. In this very moment, we are standing in the field with a bag of seeds, and we have the power to choose. Every moment offers a new opportunity to plant a different kind of seed, to cultivate a different future. This planting happens through 3 gates: the body, speech, and the mind. We plant seeds through the actions of our body. An act of generosity, of helping someone in need, is a wholesome seed that will bear the fruit of connection and joy. An act of harm, driven by anger, is an unwholesome seed that will bear the fruit of isolation and fear. We plant seeds through our speech. Words are incredibly powerful. A word of harsh criticism, spoken with the intention to hurt, pollutes not only the listener's mind, but our own. It strengthens the habit of anger within us. A word of kindness, of encouragement, of truth spoken gently, is a seed of peace. It cultivates clarity and connection, and it makes our own mind a more beautiful place to inhabit. And most importantly, most subtly, we plant seeds through our mind. This is the root of all karma. Before any word is spoken, before any action is taken, there is an intention, a thought, a silent thought of resentment, even if never expressed, is a poisonous seed planted in the soil of our own mind. It is we who experience its bitterness first. A silent thought of compassion, a simple, unexpressed wish for another's well-being, is a nourishing seed. It waters the garden of our own heart. This is why the inner work is so crucial. The quality of our inner world, the intentions we cultivate in the privacy of our own mind, is the primary cause of the world we will experience in the future. This understanding of karma completely transforms our relationship with ourselves and our lives. It resolves the paradox of not-self. While there is no fixed, unchanging I to be rewarded or punished, there is a continuous stream of cause and effect. There is a continuity of consciousness that experiences the results of the seeds it has planted. This empowers us completely. We are liberated from the tyranny of the past, and we are handed the creative tools for our future. The entire project of the inner repairman, the obsessive need to fix the broken self, is seen for the illusion it is. The question is no longer, how can I fix the flawed person that I am? The question becomes, what wholesome, beautiful seed can I plant right now, in this very moment? We shift from being a frantic mechanic, trying to repair a faulty machine, to a wise and patient gardener tending to the soil of our own heart. We are not defined by the harvest we are reaping today. We are defined by the seeds we choose to plant in this moment, and the next, and the next. With this empowering understanding that we are the cultivators of our own experience, we can now turn to one of the most significant and often stressful fields in our lives and ask how we can begin to plant better seeds there. The field of our work and our livelihood. With the empowering understanding that we are the cultivators of our own experience, the gardeners of our own minds, we now turn our attention to one of the largest and most demanding fields in modern life, our work. For many of us, the hours we spend engaged in our livelihood make up the vast majority of our waking existence. It is a field where we plant countless seeds of intention, action, and speech every single day. Yet for so many, this field is not a place of nourishment, but a place of profound stress, anxiety, competition, and a relentless pressure to achieve. It is often the primary domain of the inner repairman, a place where our sense of self-worth is constantly under review, and where the feeling of not being good enough can become a constant, humming background noise. The modern ethos of work is almost entirely focused on the destination. We are taught to fix our gaze on the future prize, the promotion, the higher salary, the corner office, the recognition, the successful launch of a project. Our value and the value of our work is measured by these external outcomes. This mindset, while it can drive ambition, is a perfect recipe for dissatisfaction. It turns our professional life into a series of endless hurdles. Once one goal is achieved, the mind immediately creates another, more distant one. There is no point of arrival, no place to rest. We are on a treadmill, and the only instruction is to run faster. We become obsessed with polishing the statue of the successful self, living in constant fear that a single failure will crack its surface. The path of wisdom offers a radical alternative. It suggests that peace and meaning at work are not found by finally reaching a destination, but by changing our entire relationship with the journey. It is a shift from focusing on the outcome to bringing our full, compassionate attention to the process. It is about transforming the how of our work, which is always in our control, rather than obsessing over the what, which is often subject to countless factors beyond our influence. There is a story of a great temple being built by a team of stone carvers. A visitor, watching them work, approaches one of the carvers, a young apprentice who seems agitated and unhappy. "What are you doing?" the visitor asks. The apprentice sighs, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm trying to carve this giant, impossible block of stone into the shape of a lion," he says, his eyes looking far off, imagining the finished product and feeling overwhelmed by the distance between his current reality and that goal. His chisel strikes are clumsy, his frustration palpable. The visitor then moves to an older, master carver working nearby. This carver is serene, his movements fluid and precise. The visitor asks him the same question. "What are you doing?" The master carver does not look up. He finishes a delicate, tapping motion with his mallet, and then says quietly, "I am making this small piece of stone, right here where my chisel touches it, a little bit smoother." His entire universe of attention was in that single point of contact. He was not thinking about the finished lion, nor the grand temple, nor the accolades he might receive. His mind was fully present with the texture of the stone, the whisper of the chisel, the satisfying thud of the mallet. The magnificent lion that would eventually emerge was not the object of his focus. It was the inevitable, natural result of 1,000 moments of perfect, mindful attention. This is the great secret to finding rest in our work. Can we become the master carver? When we sit down to write an email, can we simply write the email rather than worrying about how it will be perceived? When we are in a meeting, can we bring our full, listening presence to the conversation rather than planning what we will say next or judging others? When we perform a repetitive task, can we feel the rhythm of our own movements, bringing a quiet dignity to the work rather than being lost in daydreams of escape? By focusing on the process, the work itself, no matter how mundane, becomes a field for mindfulness practice. We are no longer running on a treadmill to the future. We are fully alive and present in the work of this moment. This approach is rooted in a core principle of the Buddhist path called Samma Ajiva, or right livelihood. At its most basic level, this principle encourages us to engage in work that is not harmful to ourselves or any other living being. It points us away from livelihoods based on exploitation, deceit, or violence. But for many of us who may not have the luxury to choose our ideal profession, right livelihood can also be understood as bringing a right attitude to the work we have. It means performing our duties with integrity. It means treating customers and clients with honesty. It means bringing an ethical awareness to our daily tasks, planting seeds of wholesomeness, even within a flawed system. This shift in focus from outcome to process also allows for one of the most powerful forms of letting go, releasing our attachment to success and failure. Our anxiety at work is so often tied to this dualistic trap. We crave success, and we are terrified of failure, and we chain our sense of self-worth to these two imposters. The practice is to commit ourselves fully to the task at hand, to do the very best we can with diligence and skill, to be the best farmer we can be, and then to release the outcome. We cannot control the economy, a sudden change in management, or how our efforts are ultimately received. We can only control the intention and quality of our own work. To do our best and then let go of the results is to free ourselves from an immense burden of psychic weight. Finally, we can bring the compassionate insight that everyone is fighting a battle directly into our workplace. The people we work with are not simply their job titles. They are not competitors, resources, or cogs in a machine. They are fellow human beings with complex inner lives, each with their own private sorrows, insecurities, and dreams. That boss who seems so demanding may be under crushing pressure from their own superiors or dealing with a crisis at home. That colleague who seems arrogant and competitive may be driven by a deep-seated fear of not being good enough. When we see our co-workers through this lens of shared humanity, the workplace is transformed. Irritation gives way to patience. Judgment gives way to empathy. The office ceases to be a battleground and becomes, instead, a community of imperfect human beings, all doing their best to find their way. By making these shifts from outcome to process, from ambition to mindful attention, from seeing competitors to seeing fellow humans, we change the very nature of our work. It ceases to be merely a means to an end, a source of stress to be endured for a paycheck. It becomes a rich and fertile field for the practice of waking up. It becomes a place where we can cultivate peace, meaning, and genuine connection. And as we learn to apply this compassionate and mindful lens to the people we work with, it naturally begins to expand, leading us to examine the most vital and often most challenging field of all, our intimate relationships with those we love. As we learn to bring a more mindful and compassionate attention to the field of our work, seeing our colleagues as fellow humans on a shared journey, this lens of kindness naturally begins to turn towards home. We come now to the most fertile, the most precious, and often the most challenging ground of all, the field of our relationships. It is here, with our partners, our children, our parents, and our dearest friends, that our deepest patterns of clinging, of fear, and of wanting to fix the world to our liking play out in their most intense and intimate forms. It is where our own happiness becomes profoundly entangled with the happiness of others, and where the potential for both great joy and great suffering is at its peak. At the heart of our struggles in relationships lies a great and tragic confusion, the confusion between love and clinging. Our songs, our stories, our entire culture often present them as one and the same. To be deeply in love, we are told, is to feel that you cannot live without the other person, to be consumed by a need for their presence and affection. But from the perspective of wisdom, these are two entirely different energies. They are the difference between the open hand and the clenched fist. Clinging, or upadana, is the clenched fist. It arises from a sense of inner lack, from a belief that we are incomplete, and that another person holds the key to our wholeness. Clinging says, "I need you in order to be happy. Your job is to fill my emptiness, to soothe my fears, to make me feel worthy." It operates like an unspoken contract, and we are constantly keeping score, measuring whether the other person is fulfilling their side of the bargain. Clinging is rooted in fear, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being alone. And from this fear grows the poison ivy of jealousy, possessiveness, control, and resentment. The clenched fist tries to grasp and secure the other person, and in doing so, it crushes the very life out of the connection. True love, known as metta, is the open hand. It arises from a sense of fullness, not lack. It is a generous, unconditional well-wishing that flows outwards. Love says, "I find joy in your existence. My wish is for you to be happy and free from suffering, independent of whether it benefits me." It is rooted in trust, generosity, and a deep appreciation for the other person's unique being. It finds joy in their joy and feels compassion for their sorrow. Love gives freedom. It does not seek to possess. It knows that its own well-being is not dependent on controlling another person's life or emotions. The open hand allows the other to be exactly as they are, and to come and go freely. There is a simple, powerful metaphor for this. Imagine you are at the beach, and you scoop up a handful of beautiful, fine sand. The first impulse, born of a desire to possess this beauty, might be to clench your fist tightly around it. "This is mine," the fist says. But the tighter you squeeze, the faster the fine grains of sand run out between your fingers. Your effort to hold on is the very thing that makes you lose what you are trying to keep. This is clinging. Now, imagine you simply cup your hand, keeping it relaxed and open. The sand rests peacefully in your palm. You can observe its texture, its color, the way the light plays on it. You are not trying to own it, only to appreciate it. You are allowing it to be. This is love. To cultivate this open-handed way of loving, we must embrace the truth of impermanence, anicca, within our relationships. We often fall in love not just with a person, but with a snapshot of a person, frozen in time. We then cling to that snapshot and suffer when the living, breathing person inevitably changes. Our partners are not static objects. They are flowing rivers, just as we are. They will have new ideas, develop new interests, and their feelings will change, just as ours do. To demand that they stay the same person you met 5 or 10 years ago is to fight a futile war against life itself. True love is not about loving a memory. It is about being curious and present for the person who is here with you today. It is giving them the space to evolve and having the courage to evolve alongside them. This acceptance of impermanence allows a relationship to breathe, to be flexible and alive, rather than brittle and fragile. This spacious, accepting love is expressed through concrete, skillful actions. Two of the most powerful are the practices of deep listening and loving speech. Deep listening is more than simply waiting for your turn to talk. It is offering the rare and precious gift of your full mindful presence. It is listening with the sole intention of understanding the other person's world. You listen not just to their words, but to the feelings behind their words. You put aside your own agenda, your own need to be right, or to offer a solution, and you create a safe space for them to be heard without judgment. When someone feels truly heard, it is a profound act of love. Loving speech, in turn, is the practice of using our words to create more peace and less suffering. It means speaking in a way that is, first, truthful, second, kind. We avoid words meant to wound or punish. Third, helpfuler words are intended to clarify and connect, not to divide. And fourth, spoken at the proper time, when the other person is actually able to receive them. How many arguments could be avoided? How much pain could be prevented if we simply paused and filtered our speech through these four gates before speaking to those we hold most dear? Ultimately, loving without clinging means releasing the inner repairman from the sacred duty of fixing the people we love. So much of our relational suffering comes from this well-intentioned but arrogant impulse. We see our partner, our child, or our friend, and we see their flaws and their mistakes, and we appoint ourselves as the project manager of their improvement. Our advice, our criticism, our helpful suggestions often carry a painful, unspoken message. You are not okay as you are. You need me to fix you. This is not love. It is control. It is a profound lack of trust in their own journey. To truly love someone is to let go of this need. It is to offer our presence, our support, our deep listening, but to give them the dignity of walking their own path, of making their own mistakes, and of finding their own wisdom. It is the grace of saying, with our whole being, I trust you. I am here for you, but your journey is your own. This is the path of the open hand. It is the practice of wishing others well, purely and freely. It is embracing their change and our own. It is listening from the heart, speaking with kindness, and trusting their path. When we untangle our hearts from the desperate need for others to make us happy, we discover a more authentic and durable form of love, one that liberates both ourselves and the people we care for. As we loosen this inner grip of attachment in our relationships, we may begin to notice another area where this same pattern of grasping for happiness in things outside ourselves creates a subtle but constant strain in our lives. Our complex relationship with the material world. As we learn to hold our most intimate relationships with an open and compassionate hand, untangling our hearts from the painful grip of clinging, we may start to notice this same pattern of grasping plays out in another vast domain of our lives. It is our relationship with the world of things, with possessions, with the powerful and pervasive promise of our culture that happiness is something that can be acquired, purchased, and owned. From the moment we are old enough to watch a screen, we are inundated with messages that what we have is not enough. The path to a better life, we are told, is paved with new products, a faster car, a larger house, a more fashionable wardrobe, a more advanced phone. These are presented as the essential ingredients for a life of meaning and contentment. We are encouraged to become relentless consumers, constantly seeking to fill an inner lack with an outer thing. But this promise is a mirage in the desert. We have all experienced the fleeting thrill of a new acquisition. We buy the new object we have been craving, and for a short time, there is a spike of pleasure, a feeling of satisfaction. But inevitably, the novelty wears off. The new car becomes just the car. The new phone becomes a familiar tool. The initial joy fades, and the mind's baseline of contentment resets. Soon, the desire for something else, something more, begins to stir again. This is the great deception of materialism, what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We are running and running, acquiring more and more, yet we remain in the exact same place emotionally, always chasing a horizon of satisfaction that perpetually recedes as we approach it. Furthermore, this relentless pursuit of more does not lead to a lighter, freer life, but often to a heavier, more burdened one. Our possessions begin to possess us. The large house requires a large mortgage, constant cleaning, and endless repairs. The expensive car brings with it the fear of scratches, the cost of insurance, and the anxiety of maintenance. Our closets become cluttered, our garages fill up, and our minds become occupied with the management and protection of all that we have accumulated. We become curators of a personal museum, spending our precious time and energy guarding treasures that do not and cannot bring us lasting peace. We are trying to quench a deep spiritual thirst by drinking salt water. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. The path of wisdom offers a different way, not through enforced poverty or harsh asceticism, but through the liberating power of simplicity and contentment. The practice begins with bringing mindfulness to the very act of wanting. In our consumer culture, the space between desire and action has been collapsed to almost nothing. We feel a want, and we click a button. The practice is to intentionally recreate that space. Before making a purchase, we can learn to pause, take a breath, and ask ourselves a few honest questions. Is this a genuine need, or is this a conditioned want? What feeling am I actually searching for by acquiring this object? Perhaps we are feeling bored, and we believe a new gadget will bring excitement. Perhaps we are feeling insecure, and we believe a luxury brand will make us feel more worthy. Is there another way to find this feeling? A way that does not involve consumption? Maybe the cure for boredom is not a new purchase, but a creative project or a walk in nature. Maybe the antidote to insecurity is not a logo, but a moment of self-compassion or a meaningful conversation with a friend. This simple, mindful pause is an act of profound rebellion against the unconscious tide of consumerism. It is the moment we stop being a puppet of our desires and become the conscious author of our own lives. There is a story from ancient Greece that powerfully illustrates the nature of true wealth. The philosopher Diogenes was a man who practiced radical simplicity. He believed that the greatest wealth was to have the fewest wants. He owned almost nothing, living in a large clay barrel in the marketplace of Athens, getting everything he needed from the charity of others or the abundance of nature. At this same time, the most powerful man in the world was Alexander the Great, a conqueror of nations who possessed unimaginable riches and commanded vast armies. Hearing of this strange philosopher, Alexander, in all his glory, went to visit him. He found Diogenes relaxing in the morning sun. Alexander, surrounded by his generals, stood over the philosopher and announced, "I am Alexander the Great." Diogenes replied calmly, "And I am Diogenes the Cynic." Intrigued and wanting to display his magnanimity, Alexander said, "Ask of me any favor you wish." Diogenes, without missing a beat, looked up at the great king who was blocking the morning warmth and said simply, "Stand out of my light." This reply is a thunderclap of wisdom. The poorest man in Greece who owned nothing, was telling the richest man in the world that the only thing he could do for him was to stop taking away something he already had for free, the warmth of the sun. Diogenes had discovered a source of contentment so complete, so independent of external circumstances, that the treasures of an empire were utterly irrelevant to him. His wealth was internal. This is the wealth of simplicity. It is the discovery that life's most profound riches are not for sale. True wealth is the richness of a deep and honest conversation with a friend. It is the priceless spectacle of a sunset. It is the freedom of a mind that is not constantly agitated by craving. It is the joy of learning a new skill, the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands, the deep peace of sitting in silence. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It is a conscious, joyful, and intentional choice to clear away the clutter, both the physical clutter in our homes and the mental clutter of constant wanting, so that we can make space for what truly nourishes the heart and soul. It is the deep, abiding peace that comes from knowing what is enough. As we begin to untangle ourselves from this external search for happiness in things, as we discover the contentment that lies in simplicity, we may notice something important. We may see that much of the frantic drive to accumulate was not just about pleasure, but about security. The desire for more money, a bigger house, more possessions, it was all part of an elaborate project to build a fortress against the future, to create a buffer against the great, terrifying unknown. Having begun to dismantle the fortress of things, we must now turn and look directly at the fear it was built to protect us from, the fundamental uncertainty of life itself. Having seen the futility of seeking lasting peace in the accumulation of things, we come face to face with a deeper, more primal fear that often drives our worldly ambitions. It is the fear of the unknown. We work so hard to build our financial and material fortresses because, deep down, we are trying to secure ourselves against the fundamental uncertainty of life. We want to know what is coming. We want to be safe. We want to control the future. This deep-seated craving for certainty creates one of the mind's most tormented states, anxiety. We become fearful fortune tellers, constantly peering into the mists of tomorrow, trying to predict and prevent every possible danger. This entire project of trying to fix the future is an illusion. It is a war against a phantom. The future, by its very nature, is unknowable and uncontrollable. Life is a wildly unpredictable unfolding. A sudden phone call can change everything. A chance encounter can open up a new path. A moment of unforeseen grace can resolve a problem we thought was insurmountable. And a sudden loss can shatter the most carefully constructed plans. To live is to exist in a state of not knowing what the next moment will bring. Our minds, however, are prediction machines, and they despise this uncertainty. The mind's primary strategy for dealing with this is worry. Worry is the mind's attempt to rehearse for a disastrous future. It operates on the flawed belief that if we can mentally play out every possible negative scenario, we can somehow prevent it from happening, or at least be prepared for it. But what is the actual experience of worry? It is the act of suffering in advance, a catastrophe that has not happened and may never happen. We experience the full emotional and physiological impact, the racing heart, the tight chest, the churning stomach of a tragedy that exists only in our imagination. We are draining the vitality and peace from the only moment that is actually real, the present, to pay tribute to a fantasy of fear. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly illustrates the folly of our attempts to label events as good or bad, and to predict the future. An old farmer lived in a poor village. He was considered well off for he owned a horse. One day, his horse ran away. All his neighbors came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate. "What wonderful luck," they exclaimed. The farmer again replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "What awful luck," the farmer replied. "Maybe." A week later, military officials came to the village to conscript all the able-bodied young men for a brutal war. They took every young man, but the farmer's son, with his broken leg, was spared. This story reveals the profound limitation of our judgment. We see only a tiny fragment of a vast interconnected tapestry of cause and effect, and we rush to label it. The farmer's wisdom lies in his humility. He understands he does not have the whole story. He withholds judgment and rests in the quiet acceptance of what is, trusting the unfolding of a process that is far too complex for his mind to grasp. He is not fighting the river, he is simply observing its course. This is the invitation for us. Can we begin to reframe our relationship with uncertainty? Instead of seeing the unknown future as a dark and threatening void, can we begin to see it as a space of pure potential? It is because the future is not yet written that anything is possible. It is in the space of uncertainty that grace can enter our lives. It is where unexpected opportunities, new relationships, and positive transformations we cannot currently imagine can arise. A future that was completely known, planned, and certain would not be a life. It would be a prison sentence. The unknown is the fertile ground of our freedom. The practice for befriending uncertainty is the same practice we have been cultivating all along. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to the anchor of the present moment. When you feel the mind being hijacked by worry, when it starts spinning its terrifying stories of what if, you gently acknowledge it. The mind is forecasting again. It is trying to control the future. And then you gently guide your awareness back to a tangible sensation in the present. You guide it back to the feeling of your breath entering and leaving your body. You guide it to the solid feeling of your feet on the floor. The future is an abstraction. The breath is real. Your feet on the floor are real. The present moment is your only true refuge from the storms of a fantasized future. As we practice this returning, we begin to cultivate something profound. We cultivate a sense of trust. In the Buddhist tradition, this is called saddha. It is often translated as faith, but it is not a blind faith in a particular outcome or a divine being who will fix things for us. It is a more grounded, practical, and resilient trust. It is, first, a trust in the process of life itself, a quiet confidence, like the farmer's, that things unfold in ways we cannot always predict or understand, and that this unfolding has its own wisdom. But even more importantly, it is a growing trust in ourselves. It is the confidence that we have the capacity to meet whatever the future brings. We have cultivated mindfulness so we can stay present and balanced. We have cultivated compassion so we can meet our own pain and the pain of others with kindness. We have learned acceptance so we can move with reality instead of fighting it. We do not need to know what will happen next week or next year. We only need to trust that when next week arrives, we will have the inner resources to meet it with wisdom and grace. The goal is not to have a predictable future, but to become a person who does not need one. By befriending uncertainty in this way, we are released from one of the heaviest burdens the mind can carry. The frantic energy we once spent on worrying and planning is now liberated, available for living fully in the present. We move from being a fearful fortune teller to a peaceful navigator, trusting our ship and our skill to sail whatever seas may come. And as we find this freedom from the tyranny of what might be, we realize that we have the strength to turn and face the other great weight we carry, the unchangeable, solid, seeming reality of what has been. Having made peace with the future, we can now learn to make peace with the past. Having learned to befriend the great uncertainty of the future, to release the anxious grip of trying to control what might be, we find ourselves standing in the present moment with a newfound sense of freedom. The heavy burden of worry has been lightened. And yet, for many of us, there is another weight that still holds us down. It is the weight of the past. If anxiety is the suffering of living in the future, then regret and resentment are the suffering of living in the past. It is as if we have been a weary traveler carrying two heavy suitcases. We have just put down the one labeled tomorrow, only to realize how heavy the one labeled yesterday truly is. This suitcase is filled with the hard stones of old hurts, the sharp shards of our own mistakes, and the bitter dust of grievances we have carried for years. To begin to unpack this burden, we must first understand the nature of the past. In our direct experience, where does the past exist? It does not exist in a tangible place we can revisit. It exists only in one form, as thoughts and memories arising in the present moment. A memory is not the event itself. It is a neurological echo, a story that the mind tells itself, right here, right now. We cannot travel back in time to alter the events. The past is unchangeable. The only thing we have any power over is our relationship to the memory as it arises in this moment. The entire project of ruminating on the past, of replaying painful scenes over and over, is an attempt to fix what cannot be fixed. It is a struggle as futile as arguing with the rain. Perhaps the heaviest stones in this bag are our resentments, the grievances we hold against those who have hurt us. We feel justified in our anger. We hold on to it as a shield, believing it protects us, or as a weapon, believing it somehow punishes the other person. But the wisdom traditions offer a starkly different perspective. They teach that holding on to anger and resentment is like grasping a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. No matter what happens to the other person, it is you who is being burned right now. Every time we indulge in a resentful memory, we are reactivating the original pain in our own nervous system. We are willingly drinking a small dose of poison, hoping that the other person will suffer. The other person may be miles away, living their life, completely oblivious. Meanwhile, we are the ones trapped in a prison of our own making, with the ghosts of the past as our cellmates. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this truth. Two monks were on a long journey. They came to a river with a strong current. On the bank stood a beautiful young woman in fine clothes, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her dress and being swept away. The monks, having taken vows to avoid all physical contact with women, were faced with a dilemma. Without a word, the senior monk walked over to the woman, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the raging river, and set her down gently on the other side. He then continued on his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He was speechless with indignation. For hours, he walked behind his senior, his mind a storm of judgment. How could he do that? He broke our most sacred vows. He is impure. And, finally, miles down the road, unable to bear it any longer, the junior monk burst out, "Brother, I must ask you, how could you do that back there? We are forbidden to touch a woman. Yet you lifted her in your arms and carried her across the river." The senior monk turned to him, his expression calm and gentle, and replied, "Brother, I left her by the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story illuminates our predicament. Life presents us with events. They happen, and then they are over. Our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from our own minds, mentally picking up the event and carrying it with us for days, weeks, or even years. Forgiveness, then, is the courageous and intelligent act of deciding to put the woman down. It is the moment we choose to stop carrying the burden. Let us be very clear about what forgiveness is and what it is not. Forgiveness is not condoning or excusing harmful behavior. It is not saying that what happened was okay. It is not necessarily about reconciling with the person who hurt you or even letting them back into your life. You can forgive someone and still choose never to see them again. Forgiveness is an internal act. It is a gift of freedom that you give to yourself. It is the decision that your own peace of mind in the present moment is more important than your attachment to a past injustice. It is the deliberate act of letting go of the hot coal, not for the sake of the other person, but for the sake of your own hand, so that it can be free to hold the beauty of the present. As we practice this, we often discover that the most difficult person to forgive is ourselves. We are haunted by our own past mistakes, by words we wish we could take back, by actions we are ashamed of. We become our own harshest judge, sentencing ourselves to a lifetime of regret. The practice of self-forgiveness is to turn the warmth of compassion towards the person we used to be. It is to look back and understand that we did the best we could with the knowledge, the wisdom, the emotional maturity, and the resources we had at that time. We are not the same person we were 5 or 10 years ago. We have learned, we have grown. To hold our past self to the standards of our present self is a cruel and unfair form of punishment. Self-forgiveness is the act of looking at that past version of yourself with all their flaws and confusion and saying, "I understand. I see your struggle. I release you from this judgment." When we put down the heavy suitcase of the past, when we release ourselves from the chains of old grievances and regrets, the mind becomes extraordinarily light and spacious. A vast amount of energy that was being consumed by ruminating, judging, and regretting is now liberated. We have made peace with what might be the future, and we have made peace with what has been the past. For the first time, we are truly free to arrive, fully and completely, in the only moment that ever truly exists, the here and now. In this clear, unburdened presence, the heart, no longer weighted down, discovers a new capacity. It is a capacity for a quiet, selfless, and radiant joy. It is a joy that is not dependent on getting what we want, but on appreciating the goodness that is already here. Having gently placed down the heavy burdens of the past and the future, our minds arrive in the present moment with a newfound lightness and space. The frantic energy, once consumed by regret and anxiety, is now available. The inner landscape, once crowded with ghosts and premonitions, is now open and clear. And into this quiet, spacious presence, a different quality of happiness can begin to blossom. It is not the loud, frantic, and fleeting excitement we are used to chasing. It is a quieter, more durable, and more selfless kind of joy. The wisdom traditions call this state mudita. It is the joy of a heart at peace, a heart that has learned to delight in the good. For many of us, our relationship with happiness is complicated by a deep, often unconscious belief in scarcity. We are conditioned to see life as a competition and happiness as a limited resource. If a colleague gets the promotion we wanted, if a friend finds a wonderful relationship, if we see images of others enjoying success and good fortune, our first reaction is often a painful clenching of the heart. A voice inside whispers, "They got the piece of the pie that should have been mine." This is the poison of envy and comparison. It springs from the mistaken belief that another person's happiness somehow diminishes our own. This scarcity mindset ensures that even in a world full of blessings, we are always focused on what we lack. It is a guaranteed path to dissatisfaction. Mudita, often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy, is the direct antidote to this poison. It is the radical recognition that happiness is not a zero-sum game. It is an infinitely abundant and renewable resource. Mudita is the genuine, unselfish delight that arises in our hearts when we witness the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the simple, warm-hearted feeling of being happy for them. It is not the boisterous, ego-driven joy of a personal victory. It is a quiet, radiant, and expansive feeling. It is the heart saying a simple, sincere, "How wonderful for you." We have all felt this, perhaps without knowing its name. Imagine a father sitting on a park bench on a sunny afternoon. He is watching his young child, who is completely and utterly absorbed in the simple, ecstatic joy of chasing bubbles. The child is shrieking with pure, unself-conscious delight as the iridescent spheres float and pop. The father is not running. He is not chasing anything. He is perfectly still. And yet, a deep, quiet, and radiant smile illuminates his face. His heart is full. What is he feeling? His happiness is not coming from any direct pleasure of his own. It is a resonant joy. He is delighting in the delight of his child. His heart has become a mirror, reflecting the pure happiness of another being. This is mudita in its purest form. This is not a magical quality reserved for saints or parents. It is a capacity within all of us, and it can be intentionally cultivated. Just as we practiced feeding the wolf of kindness with metta, we can practice feeding the wolf of appreciative joy. We can start small. The next time a dear friend shares some good news with you, pause for a moment after you offer your congratulations. Instead of immediately turning the conversation back to yourself, take a full breath and consciously open your heart to their happiness. Feel the warmth of their joy, as if it were a sunbeam touching your own skin. Let yourself be genuinely gladdened by their good fortune. Then, we can expand the circle. We can make it a practice to actively look for moments of ordinary happiness in the world around us. When you are walking down the street, notice the elderly couple holding hands. See the group of friends sharing a genuine laugh. Notice the quiet contentment of a stranger reading a book in the park. Instead of letting these small moments of grace pass by as part of the background scenery, we can consciously acknowledge them. We can offer a silent, "How lovely," in our minds. We are training ourselves to notice the good, to tune our minds to the frequency of joy that is always present in the world, but which we so often filter out. The more advanced practice is to try and find a flicker of mudita, even for those we might be tempted to envy. When we see someone who has achieved something we desire, can we look past the initial sting of comparison? Can we acknowledge the hard work, the dedication, and the sheer luck that may have led to their success? Can we remember that they, too, are a human being on a difficult journey, simply trying to find happiness, and in this one instance, they have found a measure of it? To be able to genuinely wish them well in their happiness is to free ourselves from the bitter prison of envy. This practice of appreciative joy also has an inner dimension. Mudita is not only about delighting in the happiness of others, It is also about learning to appreciate the quiet, simple joys of our own existence. It is the happiness that is available to us when we are not caught in the drama of striving and fixing. It is the gentle contentment of a warm cup of tea on a quiet morning. It is the simple pleasure of feeling the sun on your face or the cool breeze on your skin. It is the profound joy of a mind that is, just for a moment, silent and at peace. This kind of happiness does not depend on anything exciting happening. It is not a peak experience. It is a quiet, stable, and deeply nourishing baseline of well-being that comes from simply being present with life as it is. By cultivating mudita, we make a profound shift from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. We realize the world is not a barren desert where we must fight for scraps of happiness. It is a garden full of flowers, and we can find joy and beauty everywhere we look. This appreciative joy is one of the most beautiful fruits of a heart that is no longer burdened by the past or anxious about the future. It is a sign that we are truly beginning to find our home in the present. However, like all feelings, even this sublime joy is a wave in the ocean of experience. It arises and it passes away. If we cling even to this wholesome and beautiful state, we can lose our footing when it fades. To be truly and unshakably free, we need to cultivate a foundation that is even deeper than joy. We need to cultivate a profound stability that can hold all of life's experiences, the joy and the sorrow, the pleasure and the pain, with the same vast, unwavering peace. This leads us to the final, crowning quality of the liberated heart, the serene, deep ocean of equanimity. Having learned to warm our own hearts with the gentle rain of loving kindness, and having discovered the quiet, sunlit joy of delighting in the happiness of others, we now arrive at the great, grounding earth that holds all of this goodness. We come to the final, crowning quality of a heart that is truly free. For while love and joy are beautiful and expansive, they are still, in their own way, movements of the heart to hold the full, unvarnished truth of existence, with its staggering beauty and its inevitable pain, its moments of soaring ecstasy and its periods of desolate sorrow. We need something more than warmth and light. We need a foundation of unshakable stability. We need a profound and radical balance. This foundation, this deep and quiet stillness that can hold everything, is known in the ancient traditions as upekkha. It is the sublime state of equanimity. This word, equanimity, can be a source of great misunderstanding for the Western mind, which often equates passion with authenticity and stillness with a lack of feeling. We may hear equanimity and imagine a state of cold indifference, an aloof detachment that stands apart from the messiness of life. We might picture a person who, through sheer force of will, has suppressed their emotions to become a stone, untouched by the world, because they are no longer truly in it. This is not upekkha. This is dissociation. It is a state of numbness, a fortress built out of fear. True equanimity is the very opposite. It is not a closing down of the heart, but an opening so vast, so complete, that it can hold the entire universe of experience without being disturbed. It is not born of suppression, but of a wisdom so profound that it no longer needs to push or pull at reality. It is the ability to care completely, to love with the fullness of our being, but without the agitated, clinging grip of personal preference, gain, or loss. It is the heart's final homecoming to a peace that does not depend on circumstances. Metaphors can guide us where simple definitions fall short. Imagine, for a moment, a great and ancient mountain. It has sat in its place for millennia. Upon its granite face, the full drama of the weather unfolds. The most ferocious winter blizzards howl against its peaks, burying it in snow. The torrential downpours of spring cascade down its slopes in roaring waterfalls. The relentless sun of summer bakes its stone, and the gentle breezes of autumn whisper through its pines. The weather is in constant flux, a ceaseless dance of extremes. Yet through it all, through the fury of the storm and the tenderness of the morning mist, the mountain itself remains utterly, profoundly still. It is not that the mountain is unaware of the weather, it is a part of it. But its immense, deep-rooted stability, its very essence, is not shaken. It does not grasp at the pleasant sunshine, nor does it recoil from the violent storm. It simply allows it all to happen. This is equanimity. It is the development of a mountain-like stability in the mind, a core of peaceful awareness that is not thrown into turmoil by the ever-changing weather of our own lives. Or consider the vastness of the ocean. The surface can be a place of incredible activity. A storm can whip it into a terrifying chaos of towering, white-capped waves. The winds can churn it, and the tides can pull it. Yet, if you were to sink down from this turbulent surface, down through the sunlit zone teeming with life, down through the twilight zone of growing darkness, and into the abyssal depths, you would find a world of absolute stillness. The pressure is immense. The silence is complete. The furious storm raging on the surface is not felt here. The depths of the ocean are always at peace, regardless of the conditions at the surface. Equanimity is the discovery of, and the ability to rest in, these silent depths of our own being. The surface of our mind, with its rushing thoughts, its passing emotions, its daily dramasme, be in constant motion, but we can learn to anchor ourselves in the deep, quiet, and ever-present stillness that lies beneath it all. The weather of our lives, the winds that constantly blow against our mountain and stir the surface of our ocean, were catalogued by the Buddha with piercing accuracy. He called them the 8 worldly winds. They come in 4 inseparable pairs, and to be human is to experience them all. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our entire sensory life oscillates between these two. The untrained mind is a creature of pure reflex, desperately chasing pleasant sights, sounds, tastes, and feelings, while recoiling in fear and hatred from unpleasant ones. This constant chasing and recoiling is a full-time job, and it is the source of endless exhaustion. Equanimity allows us to experience pleasure without clinging to it, and to meet pain with a spacious, non-resistant awareness, robbing them both of their power to command us. The second pair is gain and loss. This refers not just to material wealth, but to all the things we believe we have: our relationships, our reputation, our youth, our health. Our sense of self is often deeply entangled with these possessions. When we gain something, we feel a surge of security and self-worth. When we lose something, we feel as though a part of ourselves has been amputated. This creates a constant, low-grade fear. The equanimous mind understands the impermanent nature of all conditioned things. It can appreciate gain without becoming attached, and it can experience loss with grace and sadness, but without the utter devastation that comes from a case of mistaken identity. The third pair is praise and blame. For social creatures like us, this pair is immensely powerful. The ego feeds on praise like a drug. A single compliment can make us feel elated for hours, and a single word of blame or criticism can feel like a physical wound, sending us into a spiral of defensiveness and self-recrimination. We become performers, constantly adjusting our behavior to win the applause and avoid the disapproval of others. Equanimity is the freedom that comes from unhooking our self-worth from the opinions of others. It is hearing both praise and blame and seeing them for what they are, the fleeting vibrations of air, the subjective opinions of another mind. With no power to define our intrinsic nature, the final pair is fame and disrepute. This is praise and blame on a societal scale. It is our public reputation, our status, our legacy. We can spend our entire lives trying to build a monument to ourselves in the minds of others and live in terror of it being defaced. The equanimous heart finds its home in its own integrity, not in public opinion. It is a state of being so grounded in its own authenticity that the shifting sands of fame and obscurity are seen as irrelevant to the real work of living a wise and compassionate life. This profound balance does not come from gritting our teeth and willing ourselves to be calm. It is not a new project for the inner repairman. Equanimity is the natural, unforced flowering of wisdom. It arises spontaneously when our understanding of the other great truths becomes not just an intellectual idea, but a lived, embodied reality. It is born from the deep, visceral seeing of impermanence. When we know in our bones that all things are like clouds passing in the sky, pleasure, pain, praise, blame, the impulse to grasp at them or push them away simply begins to wither. Why clench our fist around a cloud? It is born from the deep seeing of the nature of suffering. We realize that being endlessly tossed about by these 8 winds is inherently stressful and unsatisfactory. We see the very mechanism of our own agitation so clearly that we lose our taste for it. The drama becomes transparent, and we quietly withdraw our participation. And most profoundly, equanimity is born from the direct insight into not self. This is the understanding that completely pulls the rug out from under the entire drama. Who, exactly, is this me that is being praised or blamed? Who is this me that is experiencing gain or loss? When we look deeply, we find no solid, independent entity. We find only a flowing, impersonal process. When there is no target, the arrows of praise and blame have nowhere to land. They fly harmlessly through the open space of our awareness. This is not a philosophical trick. It is the experience of ultimate freedom. This is the very heart of the wisdom of not fixing. The equanimous mind is a mind that has finally, completely, and peacefully surrendered its war with reality. It no longer needs to fix its external circumstances to have more gain and less loss, more praise and less blame. It no longer needs to fix its internal states to have more pleasure and less pain. It has discovered a peace that is not dependent on conditions, a peace that is available within the storm as much as in the calm. It has come home. To rest in this state is to feel the stability of the mountain and the spaciousness of the sky. It is to hold the entire world in a heart that is vast, caring, and free from fear. It is the end of the search for something else, something more. It is the quiet, confident, and peaceful realization that this, right here, is enough. But we must approach this sublime understanding with great humility. This state is not a new identity to be acquired, not a final trophy to be placed on a shelf. The path of wisdom is not about building a monument, even a monument of peace. It is a living, breathing, and continuous practice. And it is to the humble, day-to-day reality of this ongoing path that we must now, finally, turn. We have stood together on the high peaks of this path, gazing out at the sublime vistas of a heart infused with loving kindness, appreciative joy, and the vast, mountain-like stability of equanimity. It is natural, from this vantage point, to feel a sense of arrival. It is tempting to believe that we have reached the final destination, a permanent state of perfect peace, from which we will never be dislodged. The ego, ever eager for a new project, may even begin to construct a new identity around this achievement, the identity of the spiritual person, the enlightened one, the one who has it all figured out. We may imagine a future life free from turmoil, a smooth and tranquil sea for the remainder of our days. But it is here, at this pinnacle of understanding, that the wisest and most compassionate teachings call us back to a crucial, grounding, and deeply humble truth. This path has never been about reaching a destination. Peace is not a place you arrive at. It is a path you learn to walk, and the walking itself is the goal. Our entire lives in the modern world have conditioned us to be goal-oriented. We are taught to value the finish line above all else. We complete the degree, we win the game, we close the deal, we launch the product. Success is defined as a series of completed objectives. It is only natural that we apply this same logic to our inner lives. We see peace, wisdom, and enlightenment as the ultimate goals to be achieved, the final projects to be completed by the inner repairman, who has now put on spiritual robes. But this mindset, when applied to the path of the heart, creates a subtle and persistent form of suffering. It keeps us oriented towards the future, forever evaluating our present state against a future ideal. It turns the journey of awakening into just another stressful, performance-based task, and it sets us up for a profound sense of failure when reality does not match our idealized projections. The truth of a life of practice is one of ebb and flow. It is a living, breathing process, not a static achievement. There will be days, weeks, or even months of profound clarity, where the mind is calm, the heart is open, and equanimity feels like your natural state. And then, there will be a day when you get cut off in traffic, and a hot surge of primal anger courses through you, shocking you with its intensity. There will be a visit with your family, and you will feel yourself, to your own dismay, slipping back into the old, reactive patterns of a much younger version of yourself. There will be periods of spiritual dryness, when your meditation feels like a boring and pointless chore, when your heart feels closed and distant, and you wonder if you have lost everything you have gained. In these moments, the voice of the inner judge will rise with tremendous force. There you go again, it will hiss. After all this work, you're still a mess. You haven't really changed at all. You've failed. To believe this voice is to fall into the deepest trap on the spiritual path. These experiences are not a sign that you have failed. They are not evidence that the practice is not working. They are an integral, unavoidable, and necessary part of the path itself. A sailor's skill is not tested on a calm sea. It is forged in the midst of the storm. In the same way, our wisdom is not measured by our ability to remain in a state of perpetual bliss. Our wisdom is tempered and strengthened in the very moments we feel lost, confused, or overwhelmed. These are not detours from the path. They are the path, presenting us with a fresh opportunity to practice. The entire practice, the whole art of this path, can be distilled into a single, recurring action: the gentle return. The measure of our progress is not how long we can go without getting lost in thought or emotion. The true measure is the quality of our return. It is the swiftness, and far more importantly, the kindness with which we come back to ourselves after we have been carried away. Imagine you are sitting in meditation, and you suddenly realize that for the last 15 minutes, you have not been with your breath at all. You have been completely consumed by a detailed fantasy about an upcoming vacation or a looping worry about a work project. The moment of recognition, the instant you wake up and realize, oh, I have been lost in thought, is a moment of pure triumph. Do not underestimate its power. That is a moment of mindfulness, shining in the darkness of distraction. It is a victory. The crucial question is, what happens next? The old habit is to meet this realization with a wave of self-recrimination. I'm so bad at this. I can't even focus for a minute. My mind is hopeless. This is the path of the second arrow, the path of self-inflicted suffering. The path of wisdom, the path of the gentle return, offers a different response, one composed of several seamless micro-steps. The first is simply the pause. The moment you realize you are lost, you do nothing. You don't try to fix the thought, analyze it, or push it away. You just stop. You take one conscious breath, creating a sacred pause between the old pattern and a new possibility. The second step is a gentle noting or naming. Without judgment, you softly label the experience in your mind: worrying, or planning. This simple act creates a bit of space. It transforms you from being the thought to being the one who is aware of the thought. The third step is a gesture of kindness. This is the heart of the practice. You bring a quality of warmth and friendship to yourself in that moment. You might say internally, "It's okay. The mind wanders." That's what minds do. You might even place a hand on your heart as a physical gesture of self-compassion. The final step is the gentle redirection. Like a kind shepherd guiding a lost lamb, you gently, patiently guide your attention back to your chosen anchor, feeling of the breath, the sensations in your hands. There is no force, no frustration, just a simple loving return. This entire sequence might take only a few seconds, but it is the most important skill we can ever learn. To return with kindness, over and over and over again, is the entire journey. Think of it like learning to play the cello. A cellist will practice for thousands of hours. They will practice the tedious scales and exercises, which is like the daily discipline of our formal meditation. They will learn to play beautiful, complex concertos, which is like the arising of wisdom and compassion in our lives. They will even learn to improvise, which is like our ability to respond to life's unexpected events with spontaneous grace. But no master cellist would ever say they are finished with the cello. The relationship with the instrument is a lifelong love affair, a continuous exploration. There will be days of sublime connection, where the music seems to pour through them from another realm. And there will be days their fingers feel clumsy and the notes sound flat. Their mastery is not a static state. It is in their unwavering commitment to the daily practice, in their love for the process. They find their joy not in a future concert hall, but in the feeling of the bow drawing across the strings right now. We must become the cellist of our own inner life. The practice is our instrument. The joy is in the playing. We must also be wary of a subtle trap known as spiritual bypassing. This is the tendency to use spiritual concepts and practices to avoid facing unresolved psychological wounds and difficult emotions. A person might use the idea of letting go to avoid the necessary and painful work of grieving a loss. Or they might use the concept of oneness to deny their anger or avoid setting healthy boundaries. The desire for a state of perpetual, transcendent peace can sometimes be a sophisticated strategy for avoiding the messy, complicated, and beautiful reality of our own humanity. But the true path is not about levitating over the mess. It is about learning to walk through it with grace. It is about bringing the light of awareness and the warmth of compassion into the most wounded and frightened corners of our own hearts. It is about becoming more fully human, not less. This means we must let go of even our most cherished spiritual goals. We must release our attachment to the very idea of enlightenment. The ego loves a grand prize, and there is no grander prize than becoming enlightened. But if we cling to this goal, it becomes just another source of striving, another way to feel inadequate, another project for the inner repairman. The final, most profound letting go is to release the need to be anyone other than the person we are right now. It is to find peace not in becoming a perfect, enlightened master, but in the simple, humble, and courageous act of being present and kind to our own imperfect self in this very moment. The path, then, is not a straight line to a glorious peak. It is more like learning to walk a labyrinth. We walk and walk, sometimes feeling close to the center, other times feeling we are on the outermost edge, far from where we started. But every single step, no matter where we are in the pattern, is a step on the path. The walking itself is the point. We are not trying to get out of the labyrinth of life. We are learning how to walk it with an open heart. This fundamental reorientation from goal to process, from destination to journey, from fixing to cultivating is the great liberation. It is the final evolution of our inner being, the complete transformation from the frantic mechanic to the wise and patient gardener. We have come to the end of this long and winding path together, a journey that has taken us from the agitated surface of our lives to the silent, still depths of our own being. And now, we return to where we began, to the image of the man in the house, but we see him now with new eyes. We see him as the great metaphor for a way of being, a way of relating to ourselves and to the world that we have been taught is normal, but which we have discovered is the very source of our exhaustion. This is the way of the mechanic. Let us look closely, for the last time, into the world of this inner mechanic. His world is the workshop. It is a place of cold concrete floors and harsh artificial light from a single buzzing bulb. The air smells of grease, hot metal, and rust. Along the walls hang his tools, and they are tools of force. There are hammers to beat things into shape, wrenches to tighten and control, grinders to violently smooth away imperfections, and calipers to measure everything against a rigid, unforgiving standard. His world is loud, hard, and unforgiving. This workshop is the inner climate of a mind ruled by judgment and fear. On his workbench, pinned to the wall, are the blueprints. These are the detailed, technical drawings of the person he believes he should be. These blueprints were not drawn by him. They are a composite, handed down from his parents, his teachers, and the endless, whispering demands of his culture. They show a person who is always confident, always successful, always happy, always in control. A person without cracks, without rust, without flaws. The mechanic is a slave to these blueprints. His entire life is a joyless, relentless effort to force the messy, unpredictable, living reality of himself into the perfect, static lines on this piece of paper. He looks at himself as a machine, a complex assembly of parts that are constantly threatening to break down. He looks at his heart, the engine of his being, and he sees only its erratic performance. When the engine of sadness or anger begins to smoke, his first and only instinct is to suppress it, to pour some chemical additive of distraction on it, to force it to run smoother. When it runs with the clean fuel of joy, he becomes terrified that the fuel will run out, and he tries to hoard it. He does not listen to what the engine is telling him. He only wants it to conform to the specifications on the blueprint. He looks at his mind, the intricate wiring of his thoughts, and he sees only a chaotic mess. The ceaseless chatter of the monkey mind is, to him, a dangerous, short circuit. He does not see it as the natural energy of an unobserved mind. He sees it as a defect, and so he tries to fix it with force. He tries to rip out the wires of negative thinking, to insulate himself from thoughts of fear, but his clumsy, forceful interventions only seem to create more sparks, more crossed signals, more inner noise. He is constantly comparing his machine to others. He looks at other people and sees only their polished exteriors. Their machines seem newer, faster, more efficient. This comparison is a form of self-torture. It fuels his sense of inadequacy and drives his frantic repairs, creating a vicious cycle of envy and striving. He is profoundly alone in his workshop, convinced that he is the only one with such a flawed and problematic machine. The result of his lifelong labor is not perfection, but a state of perpetual breakdown. The machine is not more peaceful or efficient. It is more fragile than ever, its parts worn down by the constant, aggressive meddling. And the mechanic himself is on the verge of collapse, coated in the grime of his struggle, a stranger to the warmth of the sun, his own heart as hard and cold as the tools he wields. But then, one day, a moment of grace arrives. It is not a decision, it is a collapse. After one final, failed attempt to fix an unfixable part, the hammer falls from his numb fingers and clatters to the floor. The wrench slips. The blueprints seem to mock him in their impossible perfection. The buzzing of the light overhead feels like a scream, and he simply gives up. He surrenders. He walks away from the bench, pushes open the heavy workshop door he has not opened in years, and stumbles out into the world. He blinks in the bright, unfamiliar light of the sun. The air is fresh and sweet, and next to his cold, dark workshop, he sees something he has never truly noticed before. A piece of land, a garden, long, neglected and overgrown, but vibrantly, stubbornly alive. Weeds and wildflowers grow tangled together. A gnarled old tree provides shade. Insects buzz in the air. This is not a machine, it is an ecosystem. And in this moment of surrender, the mechanic's journey ends, and the gardener's journey begins. The world of the gardener is one of partnership, not control. His new tools are not those of force, but of cultivation. He has a trowel for gentle digging, a watering can for offering nourishment, and pruning shears for skillful, discerning cutting. His work is quiet, patient, and rhythmic. He knows that his role is not to command life, but to create the conditions for it to flourish. He begins by getting to know the soil. He does not judge it for being too sandy or too dense. He simply feels its texture between his fingers. He observes where it is dry and where it holds moisture. He learns its nature with patient, non-judgmental attention. This is the practice of mindfulness, of getting to know the actual landscape of our own minds, without immediately trying to change it. He sees that the garden is full of weeds. These are the old, habitual patterns of clinging and aversion, the deep roots of resentment and fear. But the gardener does not hate the weeds. He understands that they are a natural part of any untended garden. He knows that raging against them is a waste of energy. So, gently and persistently, he begins to pull them. He knows that this is not a one-time job, but a continuous practice. Each weed he removes is an act of letting go, creating a small clearing of space for something new to grow. Sometimes he discovers that what he thought was a weed is actually a beautiful wildflower, a part of himself he had misjudged as a flaw. This is the practice of acceptance and forgiveness. Now that there is some space, the gardener chooses what to plant. He does not do this randomly. He makes a conscious choice, an act of clear intention. He plants seeds that he knows will bear nourishing fruit, seeds of compassion, seeds of kindness, seeds of joy. This is the practice of right intention, the essence of karma. He knows the harvest of his future is determined by the quality of the seeds he plants today, and then begins the patient, daily work of watering. He tends to the new growth with a gentle, steady presence. He does not flood the seedlings with a fire hose of effort, nor does he neglect them for weeks. Day by day, he offers them the life-giving water of his mindful attention and the warmth of his loving kindness. He understands that growth is a slow, quiet process, and he finds joy in the simple, repetitive act of nurturing. He learns to trust the seasons, for he knows he cannot control them. He accepts the quiet dormancy of winter, knowing it is a necessary time of rest and gathering strength beneath the surface. He delights in the tender new shoots of spring, a time of new beginnings. He enjoys the full, vibrant growth of summer without desperately trying to make it last forever. And he learns the profound wisdom of autumn, the beauty of letting go, of allowing the old leaves to fall and become nourishment for the soil. This is the embodied wisdom of impermanence, the deep peace that comes from befriending uncertainty. His relationship to the garden is one of equanimity. He delights in the beauty of a perfect rose, but he does not despair when its petals fall. He is gladdened by the presence of helpful pollinators, but he is not thrown into a rage by the insects that nibble on a few leaves. He sees the entire, complex interplay of life and death, of growth and decay, and he understands it all as a single, self-regulating, miraculous whole. He finds a deep sense of peace, not by controlling the garden, but by seeing himself as a part of it. His work is a collaboration, a dance with life. The gardener stands in his beautifully imperfect garden at the end of the day. The light is golden. The air is peaceful. There are still some weeds here and there. Some plants are thriving, others are struggling. It is not the perfect, static image from the mechanic's blueprints. It is something far better. It is alive. And the gardener, his hands smelling of rich earth, is not tired in the way the mechanic was. He is fulfilled. He has found his home, not in a perfect house, but in the ongoing, ever-changing, living process of his own garden. This is the journey we have made. It is the great shift from seeing ourselves as a problem to be solved, to seeing ourselves as a garden to be cultivated. It is the final, gentle putting down of the tools of aggression and the picking up of the tools of care. It is the homecoming our hearts have always longed for we were never broken machines. We were always, and have always been, a sacred garden, waiting for the loving attention of the gardener to arrive. And so, we arrive here, in the quiet space, at the end of a long journey. The stories have been told, the path has been walked, and all that is left is the resonance, the echo of the truths we have explored together. Let us sit for a moment in this stillness and feel the landscape of our own being, transformed not by a violent upheaval, but by a gentle, steady, and profound shift in perception. We began by listening to the noise. We attuned our ears to the relentless, chaotic chatter of the monkey mind, the screeching of anxieties, the heavy drumming of regrets. We heard the sharp, critical voice of the inner judge, delivering its verdicts from a cold and lonely chamber of the heart. This was the soundtrack of our discontent, the familiar noise we had mistaken for the very nature of our own mind. But then, we learned to listen differently. We learned to listen beneath the noise, to the simple, humble, and ever-present rhythm of the breath. We found in that quiet cadence an anchor, a refuge, a gateway to the profound silence that was always there, waiting patiently beneath the storm of thought. We began by seeing with the eyes of a critic. We saw a world of imperfections, a self full of flaws. We saw the cracks in the plaster, the dust on the surface, the ways in which we and the world were constantly failing to meet the rigid blueprints of our expectations. But then, we learned to see with new eyes. We began to see the world through the lens of impermanence, not as a collection of static objects, but as a shimmering, flowing river of miraculous change. We looked at our own pain and saw the second arrow, the suffering we were adding through our own resistance. We looked at the face of a stranger and saw not another, but a reflection of our own humanity, a fellow being fighting their own secret battle. We looked at the cracks of our own past wounds and, through the golden lacquer of compassion, began to see not scars of damage, but lines of beauty, strength, and character. We began by feeling the world with a clenched fist. We felt the tension of grasping, the desperate attempt to hold on to pleasure, praise, and gain. We felt the strain of pushing away, the exhausting effort of resisting pain, blame, and loss. Our entire emotional life was this constant, tiring push and pull, a tug of war with reality that we could never win. But then, we learned to feel with an open hand. We discovered the spacious, relaxed freedom of letting go. We learned to hold our joy lightly, appreciating it without demanding it stay. We learned to meet our sorrow with a courageous and allowing presence, permitting it to move through us without building a wall against it. We felt the solid ground of equanimity beneath our feet, a stability that could hold the full spectrum of life's weather with a vast and caring embrace. This entire journey has been a single, fundamental transformation. It has been the slow, quiet, and beautiful evolution from the way of the mechanic to the way of the gardener. It has been the putting down of the tools of force and the picking up of the tools of cultivation. But now, as the echo of these teachings settles, the most important question arises: what now? How do we carry the peace of the garden into the noise of the world? It is a mistake to believe that this path requires a retreat from life. You do not need to move to a monastery on a mountaintop to find this peace. The practice is not about changing your outer circumstances. It is about transforming your inner relationship to those circumstances. The real monastery is the one you build within your own heart, and its doors are open in the midst of the office, in the chaos of the morning rush, and at the dinner table with your family. Living as the gardener on an ordinary Tuesday looks like this. You wake up, and before your hand reaches for your phone, before the world's demands come rushing in, you take one conscious breath. You feel the air enter your body, and you feel it leave. In that single, simple moment, you have watered a seed of presence. You have tended to your garden before doing anything else. That is the practice. You are in a difficult meeting at work. Someone criticizes your idea, and you feel the hot flush of defensiveness, the tightening in your chest. The mechanic in you wants to immediately build a wall of counter-arguments to defend the statue of your competence. But the gardener in you remembers. You silently bring your attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor, your anchor in the present moment. You acknowledge the feeling of defensiveness without becoming it. You whisper to yourself, "This is what defensiveness feels like. It's okay. It's just weather." You listen to the rest of the conversation from this more grounded place. You have just practiced equanimity in the boardroom. That is the practice. Your child or your partner does something that frustrates you, and the powerful urge to fix them to correct their behavior arises. The mechanic wants to grab the tools of lecturing and criticism, but the gardener in you pauses. Instead of speaking, you listen. You listen deeply, not just to their words, but to the feeling underneath. You offer them the spaciousness of your quiet, non-judgmental presence, trusting them to find their own way. You have just chosen cultivation over control. That is the practice. At the end of a long day, you lie in bed, and the mind begins to replay your mistakes, your perceived failures. The inner judge clears his throat. The old habit is to believe him, to fall into a cycle of regret. But the gardener in you offers a different possibility. You place a hand on your heart and offer a single phrase of loving kindness to the tired, struggling person you have been today. May I be at peace. I did the best I could. You are forgiving yourself for the weeds that grew today, knowing that tomorrow is a new day to tend the garden. That is the practice. This is not a grand, heroic project. It is a path of small, gentle, and consistent gestures of returning. It is a commitment not to perfection, but to kindness. The journey we have taken together was not about arriving at a destination. It was about learning how to walk. It was about discovering that the peace we were seeking was not a treasure to be found at the end of the road, but a quality of attention and care that we can bring to the road itself. And so, we leave you here, at the beginning. Not the beginning of a new war to fix yourself, but at the beginning of a new friendship with yourself. The search is over. You do not need to be repaired. Your flaws are not defects. They are the unique contours of your own humanity. Your past is not a life sentence. It is the rich, dark soil from which new wisdom can grow. And your future is not a problem to be solved. It is an open sky of possibility. There is nothing you need to add to yourself to be whole. There is nothing you need to remove to be worthy of peace. All that was ever required was for you to stop fighting, to turn your gaze inward, and to recognize the profound beauty of the being that has been here, patiently waiting, all along. The house was never haunted. It was just empty, and the guest you have been waiting for is you. Welcome home.